And
Something wrong with Facebook?
it's we're going to have to do the YouTube to Facebook link again. It'll be there in just a moment. I don't know if we don't know if it's Facebook or Zoom. It's giving us the same fit it did a couple weeks ago.
Ah, there's Mike McPhee. There's Bill. There's Phil. Who's that? Bill Harvey.
Okay, I'm gonna go dark.
Bye.
Where's Billy?
He has a doctor's appointment and he may be late, so I may start the meeting.
Oh, okay.
Man, you got a beer in the background there?
Oh my God, my husband put that there. Wait, look what it says.
Wow, Sutton Redfish Ale. He's going in the beer business?
No, a friend of ours knows how much he likes to fish for redfish, so he made the beer and made a label for Mike.
That's great, but I don't know if I'd want to drink the Beaufort water. River water.
Yeah, brewed with genuine Beaufort River water.
Does he offer delivery?
Huh?
Does he
Actually,
offer-
Stephen Murray, you know who made this? Your neighbor down the street, Paul Heilig.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a beer meister, apparently.
I have to check in and see if he delivers.
Yeah, we'll see if he makes it. Ask him if you'll make him a Stephen Murray beer.
I want some Sutton Red Ale.
Yeah, it looks pretty
puts you on
good.
redfish.
Redfish ale,
You
yeah.
can have one. You got extras, right, honey? Yeah, he says it's good.
I hear you drink one of those in the boat, the redfish just jump right in.
Yeah. There's Grandpa Bill Harvey.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Love it.
How's that sweet granddaughter of yours?
Love it.
He's a cutie.
Whoops.
Hey, Mike,
Yes, sir.
I just want to make a little announcement tonight on procedures that we're going to have a vet being the one keeping track of all the questions and stuff that come up so Stephen can be freed.
Okay.
That'll be the procedure going forward. It'll be the city clerk. So whether you want it or you want me just to say just the procedural change, whatever.
That'll be great. Let's do that.
Pardon me?
Thank you, Vet. I appreciate that.
I pulled up my Facebook feed just to see if I could help follow things, but that's great. Thank you.
You all are so welcome.
I mean, the good news is we seem to have more folks watching. So we have more interaction. And I just talked to Bill after the last meeting and said it's could be a lot to juggle if it continues to increase.
Right. It's
Agreed. Agreed.
It's a good plan.
No problem.
So thank you.
Ma'am, appreciate it.
You are so welcome.
Are we ready to begin, ladies and gentlemen?
We are.
Good evening, everybody. Today is the 26th of May, and we are having our work session at 5 and our council meeting at 7 o'clock this evening via Zoom. The mayor is at a doctor's appointment, but will be joining us shortly. So I would like to go ahead and start our work.
Oh, there he is.
Thank you.
Ah,
Mr.
Welcome
Mr.
aboard.
Mayor Pro Tem, Mrs. Reese, I need you to hold on 1 second till we get you up on Facebook, okay?
no problem.
All right, thank you. You still there, Sean?
Oh, that was a week ago.
We need some music while we're waiting.
I'm not volunteering.
Mike McPhee could sing.
I know, that's what I was thinking.
I think not. Thank you, though. We should have a kazoo in the background.
Hey, come on, McPhee, give us a little Amazing Grace.
The,
I'll back you up on kazoo.
I run to the music room and do it on the piano. So
Dave Pritchard has the greatest off camera. It looks like he's there, right? It looks like he's paying attention, but he's so stoic.
he's
Is he
very,
really
very.
there?
No, that's not him.
Oh. That's
He's-
him. Oh,
he's-
there he is.
He's there. Yeah, I see him.
There he is.
That's a good one. I gotta figure something like that out. Screenshot it.
Yeah. So it makes you look like you're there, but then you can really not be there.
Well, in full disclosure, I'm actually at home. It just looks like I'm at work.
Oh,
Do you have a screenshot? You have a virtual background. This is your office, right?
Yes.
I like that.
Well, I don't want to rub it in, but I'm actually in the boat in front of the bridge. So
And it's so quiet and calm considering how windy it is today.
And your hair's not moving.
a lot of hairspray.
We got it all covered.
Bill Harvey's down in the islands. He's in the Turks and Caicos.
Yep.
Exactly where I am.
That's perfect.
All right, everybody, it's Reese. We're back again. So we're live on YouTube. We posted that link to the Facebook account, and we'll continue to do so throughout the length of this meeting so that people can move over to YouTube and watch it live. And then this meeting will be posted in video form on the Facebook through the link from YouTube at the end of the meeting. The link from Zoom to Facebook did not work again tonight. So that's where we're at. Bill, as long as you're good with it, I recommend we start from this point forward.
All right, welcome everybody. We are calling to order our work session for May 26th. We've had a little bit of a glitch with our Facebook connection, so there is a YouTube live that you can go to. And of course, it will be posted on our websites following the meeting. We have slight procedural change. Mr. Prokop, will you share with us how we're going to be doing questions moving forward with our meetings?
Yes, all the questions that anyone has or comments will now be monitored by the city clerk, Yvette Burgess. This will free Councilman Murray to participate freely in the meeting. And we'll cover this also when we get to the budget discussion, because we'll want people to forward any questions to her. So city clerk will now be monitoring, and when you or the mayor want to have the questions read, she will give you any questions that have come up.
Thank you, sir. Just for your information, the mayor is at an appointment but plans to join us shortly. So we're proceeding with the meeting of our work session, and hopefully he will be coming with us, coming online with us soon. We have first agenda item for discussion this evening will be our designated marketing organization update. Rob Wells, the president of the Greater Beaufort Port Royal Visitors and Convention Bureau. Rob, welcome Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having me. Hope I'm coming across pretty live here.
You look good.
I'm making sure I get everything set up. So if you don't mind, I would like to, if given the opportunity, to share my screen. Can everybody see the screen here?
Yes.
Yep.
Perfect. If you don't mind, I'd like to kind of jump out to the restart, renew concept of what's moving forward with the Convention and Visitors Bureau as we tackle the next set of phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 of the post-COVID recovery plan for not only City of Beaufort, but for our destination as a whole. It is we've heard it mentioned multiple times, it being unprecedented. And we're seeing that play out day in and day out. Even in my office, even the conversations that we all individually have, and especially people calling our look. So I kind of want to break it down a little bit today and kind of go through a kind of that phased approach of where we are right now, where we're going to be heading and the direction that we see that recovery plan looking. I hope everybody had a great Memorial Day weekend celebration, as it was good to catch up with some folks who were able to travel in. And I had some family members come in this weekend to stay, and one of those family members asked me how things were going. And I said, well, to be honest with you, typically we just pull the car over on the side of the road and let the storm pass. But unfortunately, this time when we pulled the car over, it ran out of gas. And the storm is somewhat kind of still over the top of us to some degree, but there's some chance for us to move forward, but we can't. And he kind of quietly turned to me and said, Rob, listen, it sounds like you need some fuel. And he's right. So we need fuel right now. And so kind of want to break a little bit about where we are right now. We need some fuel, but let's chat about what that looks like right now. We paused most paid media advertising right around that March 14th date. Now, while we continued our social media presence, we did pitch news stories and things that were COVID related, but we postponed all planned travel writers. We pivoted from advertising to research, and we've gotten prep for this relaunch plan, which we are looking at a target date of May 29th to kind of jumpstart that. Over the course of the time period from March 14th to this current day, we have seen, and I have talked to numerous business owners and tourism hospitality employees and different people who have a lot of their livelihood attached to the travel and tourism industry, has reached out to some degree. And the conversations have covered everything. But I want to kind of show you what's going on, because we may be in the midst of a recession with the economy. We may be in the midst of a recession, as some of the articles are pointing out, but I want to point out that the travel industry is in a depression. Nationwide, 51% of all hospitality employees are out of a job right now. Now, from a national standpoint, that's important because it relates to those people who are dependent upon the travel and tourism industry. And that applies to us here in Beaufort. A destination is sort of highly dependent upon the travel and tourism industry for a lot of different things. Small businesses were extended some sort of a lifeline from the federal government, but unfortunately PPP and SBA, these acronyms you've read about and heard about, that relief for a lot of our small businesses is drying up. For some people it's already ended, and for others it ends in June. But PPP was meant to be a lifeline for small businesses. But the requirement to staff up and make the verifications necessary to receive that grant were almost to the point where it was very difficult for business owners to make that move. And it was basically not realistic for a lot of businesses. Matter of fact, if you don't have customers in your store or in your shop or in your restaurant or in your hotel, and sometimes having that cash revenue going forward was very difficult. And that's what our businesses are facing right now. Others, it's the restrictions were in place. So I can tell you a quick story. May 1st, the state park, Hunting Island State Park, was able to reopen. And for some attractions and tours, they were able to open at that time, deemed safe and by Accelerate South Carolina to reopen. Unfortunately, there were other tour companies who weren't allowed to reopen until very recently. So both state and local restrictions, both applied and lifted, affected the small businesses that make up our industry. We've lost over 5,000 room nights due to hotel closures. That's not lost business. That's hotels that closed the door sometime in March and have not opened up yet. Now, to put that into perspective, we are without 1,600 visitors per day as it stands right now in a given typical year. And that's been the case since March. We average around 1,600, 1,650 visitors per day. But the biggest part about that is the businesses in Beaufort are missing out on $250,000 of visitor spending per day. And that's the number that's important, because as any small business owner will tell you right now, cash is the most important thing. And without customers in the shops and customers on a sustainable basis, revenues are going to be tight, and cash now being paramount might be limited. And so that's where a lot of conversations in our office and with our stakeholders have come to. And while some are encouraged by this past weekend, Memorial Day weekend was great, but you know, it's how sustainable is it, right? And that's what our plan is to put in place and what that looks like. See, right now, our economy needs sort of that refueling, if you will. Every destination right now is a startup. We've all had to pause. We've all gone to some sort of shelter in place and had travel restrictions or anything. But so everybody coming out of this, the different phases, is some sort of startup. And that's important to factor in as we go forward. We see a timeline of recovery, and I mentioned this last week to you guys, that there's a three-phase approach. The first phase, we're going to call phase 1, is the lift, basically now, the next 3 months, the first 3 months, if you will. Phase 2 is the following 3 months. And then phase 3 has the potential to be the new normal. I'm not sure if that's in 9 months. I don't know if it's in 12 months or 18. My crystal ball broke about March 14th, but the trends indicate that it's going to be somewhere in that 12 to 18 month vicinity. And so those things are important to know, that the new normal is going to look different as we get there, but it's kind of important. This is what the trends are kind of telling us as we state. 1 in 3 Americans are wanting to travel within the first 3 months. Now that may not apply to you directly, but in this survey that we are finding that it has changed even in the time frame that we took the survey or see these trends come in there. 3 weeks ago, I was on a call with the Merchants Association and some other folks that are in there, and I told them, I said, listen, the early adopters are going to be in that 15 to 20% range. I said, but with 3 weeks from now, I'll feel a little bit more confident about what that number looks like. And lo and behold, 3 weeks later, the new survey comes out, and actually when the lift happens, it's going to be 1 in 3 Americans, which is kind of important, because that lays kind of what they're looking for and how that's going to fit into this. Some studies have it somewhere around 33% to 35%. Others have it as high as 40. Some have it as low as 20. But we're going to factor in that 1 in 3 Americans want to travel early. They're willing to travel by car. And that matters for us because we're predominantly a drive market. And so our major markets of Greenville and Charlotte and the Atlanta metro area, Charleston, Columbia, Aiken, and Augusta, they kind of matter. So if you look at the other side of the screen, Americans who will take a vacation or weekend getaway, they sort of already, 45% already know what they're going to do. 55% are still making up their minds. That's the other side of that. And that's important. That's the number we're focusing on as we kind of lay our plan out. The average trip distance is starting to change. The more restrictions that are lifted in the South, you're starting to see places from other locations come in. But for our phased approach, we are sticking to a drive market within those areas I mentioned earlier. And there's a reason for that. We'll discuss that in just a second. I do want to highlight one thing, is that most people are getting towards summer travel and focus on beach travel in small town destinations. And that continues to be the case. That has been one of the trends that we have seen from the start of this, and one that we're very excited to see and read and stay constant throughout, because it gives us some assurance and hope for what the next 3 to 6 months could potentially be if we get the message out there to the people looking to travel. Any questions on this going forward, anybody? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to move on. Somebody asked me a while back, well, Rob, if 33 are going to travel in the first 3 months, what's it look like for those who are willing to travel? And to be honest with you, it's the months 4 to 6 does include the first month. You're going to have the majority of people who are looking to travel in 2020 are going to travel within the first 6 months. And predominantly those people have been travelers in the past. I ask this question a lot. If you're willing to travel pre-pandemic, what would be the hesitation if the CDC and you had some assurances of travel? And people would say, well, if there was assurances in travel, I would feel a little bit more comfortable to move. Some people say, I'm not traveling until 2021 or 2022 even. And that's fair. I understand everybody's in certain situations, but for the premise of this conversation and for our recovery plan, we're focusing in on those people who are looking to travel within the next 3 months, the next 6 months, and then the following 9 to 12 months. Because that's a phase 3, that's a 3-phase approach that we feel like will be something for us to navigate through, but also for planning and projection for both our expectations being met of the visitors with great experiences. And so that's important to recognize as we move forward here. So what about the plan? Well, the plan has changed a little bit based on some notions of what people are looking at. People want outdoor activities, obviously. They want road trips. Heritage and cultural continue to pop up on activities they want to do. And you can go through the list. I'm not going to read them there, but ideally these themes have been a constant for our market for quite some time. So it's as if we don't need to recreate something, correct? I mean, this is who we are as a destination to some degree. We're going to be able to meet those limited expectations pretty well. It's going to be what the new expectations of visitors look like and customers in general. That's what we've been working on for quite some time and getting that message to our business owners and our hotels and restaurants and that's going to be a conversation that we have later on. Again, I mentioned the target markets. I don't think anybody's going to see a target market on there that looks different than what we typically do. We have consolidated though to those markets that have lifted restrictions, with Charlotte being the only market in North Carolina that we're going to target within the first 2 phases. Our objectives are very similar, but they do slightly differ. And typical, we would say, hey, we're gonna be a lead generation campaign. And while a focus of our lead generation, our most important thing is to fill the funnel back up. We have to fill the funnel up with customers for our hospitality industry people, the retailers, the restaurants, the attractions, the tours, the hotels. Everybody's going to need a funnel refill. And this is a mechanism that we find very attainable for the DMO because, you know, as a city, you guys put your trust in the DMO to carry out our mission, which is to lift the destination and invite people to visit. And that's one of our roles as a marketing organization, is to do that through advertising. And so this advertising plan fits a lot of that goal in place, with one major caveat is that instead of strictly being a lead generation campaign, it's a combo of both a brand awareness and a lead generation conversation. And that's something that in the past we have strictly been a lead gen, but we are adding it. It's just going to be brand awareness also in there. If you want to know what the direct advertising, I've got them listed here. Just note that it's not an all eggs in one basket kind of approach, but we are going to take those advertising outlets that allows us to put $1 in and get $1 out in return. In other words, if we spend $100,000 in direct placement, then $100,000 goes to direct placement. There's no hidden commission or fees or anything like that. So our advertising outlets had to be able to meet that need. And in some cases, we've asked our advertising outlets to match with a COVID recovery plan for advertising in the recovery stages. And some of our advertising outlets have done just that, TripAdvisor being the most notable. And so those are very promising. We're very excited about getting this campaign underway because of the traffic opportunities that we get on the website. But also, listen, our job is to set the table for when people make that decision when they're ready to travel on their own. And so while some of our messaging may be a little bit direct in the past, we are softening the message to travel when they are ready. And for some, that will be within the first several months. And for others, it may be in the next 3 months. And for a very few, it may not be until 2021. But again, our job is to present the destination as a place to travel. The phased approach looks very much like this, and I skipped over the other part. The pie chart was just a breakout of how the ads would be divvied up money-wise. But I want to go to this chart. This shows you we will be spending the majority of our advertising recovery plan in the first 3 months, with the first 2 months being the heaviest. And then we will come back in with the next 3 and kind of ramp it up and be able to make those projections, whether or not our demand on the market is hitting an uptick or not. We'll be able to make adjustments as we go through. Listen, our approach has never been all one spend, all 1 month and be done with it. It's never been the approach. Some people who may not understand what phase marketing looks like miss this graph, but to you guys that we presented in the past, you understand this quite well, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate your knowledge behind that, because you'll recognize that these months are kind of segmented out for us to be able to target these appropriately. And that's where it's going to come in. So not only are we working with advertising, we're going to have to work with our PR teams to make sure we're inviting writers at the right time to tell the right story. We're going to have to work with our shop owners and our restaurants and our hotels to make sure that they're setting the proper expectations ahead of time. It's one thing to assume someone knows something back in pre-COVID, but post-COVID, it's better for you to be upfront as a business owner with the expectations you have for your restaurant, your hotel, your store, than it is for them to guess. And so we're working with those. And there's been a great deal of effort put into how we can set those things going forward. One of those is to take the Safe Commitment Pledge. This is a two-pronged approach, and I think Bill's mentioned it in the past, and the council is kind of made note of it. The BeaufortSafe.org can go on there and commit to doing this level of cleaning and safety. This is another one of those assurances that customers and visitors are looking for out of our market. But at the same time, this takes it a different step. It takes it a step further, excuse me, as if there's opportunity for training to be attached on the second part of this, and that's important. So that there's not any misunderstanding about what cleans and what doesn't, what disinfects and what doesn't. And it's not something that we just loosely came up with. This is something that our partners, Baja and the Chamber and the city and the county and the hospital and DHEC, and these people are working together to put this in place and then have a training outlet out there for our stakeholders to be a part of. This is one of those things that you'll see flash across BeaufortSC.org. You'll see it in some of our digital advertising. You'll see it in some of our social media presence, as well as our stakeholders taking the pledge and putting the stickers on their store windows and starting to open up. So if you haven't taken the pledge and you're a business owner and you want to kind of get that message out, go visit BeaufortBFTSafe.org. Kind of look at the guidelines and be a part of that. But this is a messaging that also brings a level of assurance to our customer base and our visitors going in the future. I hope I haven't been too quick on this. I was giving a short runway, but I do want to leave time for questions and concerns, and then some dialogue about some opportunities that could be available to us. But I will say this, it's great to have good partners. And I would say that if we were ever looking at it right now, that we are looking at this timeline as an immediate action. I can't state enough how impactful COVID has been on our small businesses. And when I say small businesses, I'm not talking about franchise. I'm talking about our friends and neighbors, the ones that we see at the stores and at church and at social gatherings when we did have them, and then in the park and picking up takeout and all those things. Those are the ones whose livelihoods depend on the travel and tourism industry who are struggling right now. And it's imperative for us to not only start filling the funnel up, but this is a mechanism that we have in our destination that we can get out there and start advertising when the time is appropriate for people to return, recognizing that not all businesses are open at this point, but they're starting to gradually get open. And we're trying to time it so that when businesses are open and ready to handle those expectations, they can meet those expectations. Some of the conversations from this weekend is that some people had a pretty good response to what they were doing, and others have room for improvement. And as a destination, we have to work each and every day to make sure we fit one formula, and that is that the Beaufort visitor experience meets or exceeds their visitors' expectation. And if we can do that, we will have sustained success in the long term. But in the immediate future, we need to get the message out there that when they are ready, when visitors are ready to travel, that we can get them back to town.
Rob, thank you very much. The mayor has joined us, so I will.
You just keep up. You're doing a good job.
I would like council to ask any questions, and we'll see if Yvette has anything coming in from any of our people watching us on YouTube. So, Mr. Cromer, have any questions?
Rob, sort of away from the advertising part, the Paris Island graduations.
Yeah.
Any word on those, and when they're going to open that up? Because I know that's a steady stream of patrons for some of our hotels and things like that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. It provides a lot of compression in the market, as they say, to allow us to be able to have that demand on a basis. We have not heard anything definitive at this point. We have there's a tentative plan that they reassess towards the end of summer about what the future could look like, and that may be January 1. I think there's some conversation about limited return for families, but all that speculation at this point, as they've kind of got some other business they need to attend to. But I think this brings up an interesting point, Phil, is that in the future, we don't know what Parris Island graduations are going to look like. You know, pre-pandemic, I mentioned to City Council that if ever the time to diversify how we got visitors in the town, we're kind of looking at it like, what happens if Parris Island moved to an all live stream, limited capacity public graduation? Well, we may be heading that direction. And so as a destination, we have to be able to be considered that we have to maybe use some of this time to regain some market share, but also diversify our customer base. And that's important to recognize no matter if Parris Island was opening up or not. But it's a great question, and then one that we have been monitoring and have been working with their PIO to gain access and information from on a routine basis. It's the number 2 question that we get asked by some of the businesses in the hospitality industry. The number 2.
Thank you. Nan, any questions? You're still on mute.
Unmute. Now can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Rob, I know that with the ATAX money, that's the market is what, 60 miles and over? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
50 miles, yes.
So I'm thinking about, since people are not traveling, and, maybe is there any possibilities of taking some hospitality money and advertising to our less than 60 miles, even closer in, because people aren't traveling, and maybe we should try to grab our, real locals. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do give that consideration as well, and I appreciate that. In our recovery efforts, when we mention those metro areas, we also include the areas and surrounding that as well. So it looks different, and not to get into the mechanics of it, but I do recognize what you're saying, and it is a part of our strategy, whether it be social media or something that gives us a little bit better geolocation, where we can target the state kind of in the local market. But also know that our intent is to drive overnight visitors, as they tend to spend a little bit more.
Well, yeah, I get that part.
Time.
Hotels,
and so it's a mix. But you're spot on, Nan. If I'm being completely transparent, we will always have some element of hospitality money being spent in the local market, especially when it comes around for the day tripper, because we incorporate something called intercept marketing, where we let somebody like a Hilton Head or a Charleston do the heavy lift, and we go in there and kind of pick them up. That's a little different. We've always had that in there, but you don't want to get me in trouble with my secret sauce messaging, do you, Nan?
No,
okay.
Of course not.
Thank you. Stephen.
Rob, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate all the insights as always. So Councilman Cromer brings up a good question about Parris Island. I mean, fortunately, they are bringing recruits, I guess, are quarantining up at the Citadel. So from a mission readiness standpoint, we'll still be prepared. But I know there has been some conversation about families not coming back until, fall at the earliest. And I've heard a number thrown out one time, maybe you can verify it, that for every one recruit, there's about approximately 7 family members who come to our area and visit to support the recruit in graduation. Any idea about the economic impact? And you done any modeling that if we don't have graduations between now and say the end of the year, what that looks like? And the second question would be, if we can acknowledge a pretty large hole. I mean, in our businesses, for example, we've had a number of group tours, buses that were planning on coming as late as October, November, have already called and canceled over the last couple of weeks. So any idea about what the sort of protracted economic losses would be, acknowledging your crystal ball has already broken back in March?
So let's tackle the first part there with the trend. So our forecast modeling without that, we don't have a definitive number on the number, but we use 6 to 7, for party size. And some of the early conversations that I know that has been tossed around online is for the ability to have if they did bring back graduation, Stephen, it could be a limited family allotment. So 4. Well, that will depend on the party size. So if you look at it, and the average party size makes up $150 for dining, that's the model. We have not projected all the way through December what that whole looks like with the return on the full economic scale, but it's something that we have considered based on when that timing happens. The second part of that is the group tour, which gives us a more definitive number. Without the buses coming in, and they typically spend somewhere between $3,000 to $5,000 per motor coach, right? And our tour schedule was increasing quite substantially from the decrease of 2017, where we lost over 100 buses in that given year. We were starting to see major upticks in our group effort, and they have been shuttered almost for the full year, which leaves us a hole of somewhere around $800,000 in economic spending from the motor coach businesses in Beaufort. And that is from March to December.
Okay.
And so that's a sizable hole from
Right.
that.
And I'm just penciling out some math here while we were talking and using 6 to 7. I mean, and last number I heard, we were right about 20,000 recruit graduations annually. It fluctuates 19 to 21, 22. But for rough math, say 20,000, we're right about the middle of the year. So we'll go conservative, say 10,000 recruits. So that's anywhere from 60 to 70,000 visitors that we will potentially not see by the end of the year. Is that? Yeah. And then you estimate a visitor spend on the graduation families of approximately 150 a day, or is there?
Well, our visitor spend altogether is somewhere around $250 to $300, depending on where they stay within town. And that's on top of their overnight accommodation. That does not include overnight accommodation. So you're looking at a roughly $300 a day spend covering the basics.
Okay. So I guess my point is, I wanted to be optimistic that, half of March, all of April into May was going to be awful in my business. And we've acknowledged that. But I think there's this belief that, we're going to continue to start ramping up as we lift restrictions and can hold the line in number of new COVID cases. That's also a question mark, I guess. So potentially we still have a several $1 million hole in our budget through the end of the year on a couple of industries that we really have no control over. Is that fair to say in terms of group travel buses and parasite?
Yes, as far as the group travel and the military component of our business, yes, there's a gap, a big hole in there. And
Okay.
so, as I mentioned when Phil and both Nan were bringing up the type of attraction travel that we're looking for, our role is to fill that funnel up and diversify that visitor base. And it takes a sizable amount of funding from a marketing standpoint to make that happen. And for us, giving the resources that we are looking at, that's going to be one of those components that we're going to have to address. And right now, we've approached we approached the county for funding, which I think everybody is aware of. And in that request, at this point, it's absolutely gone. It hasn't gone anywhere at this point. There's still some debate over procedures. And so going forward, we recognize that not only is there a hole in us being able to recruit that, but how do we sustain the recruitment long term to be able to mitigate that hole that's there because
Right.
the marketing effort is what fills the hole.
That was my point, is that we've got a couple of sectors that we really have no control over. But we have a couple of sectors that we do have some control over in terms of how we market to those folks and put our message in front of them. And sort of move over to those categories now. I know you said you held some of your ad placement starting in mid-March, and appreciate you pulling that from the market and sort of closing Beaufort down, because I agree and think that was the responsible thing to do. I suspect that there were some savings in being able to pull those, depending on the relationship with whoever the vendor was, you were able to save some money. I suspect that you had to write some checks for things that you made commitments to, and there was a no refund policy. I guess what I'm getting at, do you have some savings from the last 2 to 3 months that could be used now for your phase one? That's question one. Question two is, in a perfect world, and if money weren't tight, what are you looking for in terms of a marketing budget that makes a real dent and allows us to go after those markets that we do have some control over to help prop up the hospitality.
Welcome back to your news.
Okay, so I'll take that in the first part there. There was a little bit of a breakup on my end, and I apologize. I think I got the gist of the questions. The first question, we were able to initiate a spend of $120,000 for the next 2 months in advertising. Now, that's money that we were able to pull from contracts that we had, that we were able to pause in advertising spend, but also the savings that we had from reducing out of contract, which is a little bit higher than we normally would spend in a given month per basis. If you look at that, that's a $60,000 per month spend. What we planned in our recovery effort is phase one would be $314,000. Now that is based on several different key elements to that plan, and mainly being eyeballs for video views and social media presence and these other activities on TripAdvisor that allowed us to retarget it and make the ask appropriately. So if you do the quick math, you see there's a shortfall of almost $200,000 between what we will be able to put in based on pausing and pulling from what net savings we had at the CDB and putting them back into the marketplace, and opposed what we're missing. So there is that delta if you're looking at that from that standpoint. Does that answer your second part?
Yes. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Just curious from my standpoint, when you look at the push that you were doing for the first phase, especially since the outdoor, it appears that outdoor seekers of vacations and ecotourism may be an area that people would feel more comfortable with. Are you utilizing that in the marketing plan in the first phase to go after those people?
Yes, that demographic is, and that behavioral is paramount to what we message. That theming has always been very key in our messaging, regardless of the time period. But for this point, it's very much a part of what we're messaging, and that covers, all different elements. But people have always wanted some sort of access to water. Well, post pandemic lift, for some people are looking to get outdoors a little bit more, and people want to have that activity, and they want to be on the coast, and there's some beauty to that. There's also a part of it that they want to be in smaller destinations where there's the perception of a little bit more, community distancing, if you will. And so and that's where the outdoor activities come to light a little bit more prevalent. But again, looking at this across the board, the one thing that I would keep impressing, just to kind of pivot just a little bit, is that in order for our recovery plan, and one things that we're having to assess is, how are we going to make up that 120? And what does that look like going forward for the CDB if we already identified that 314,000 gets our number in there? And then what is that opportunity for us in phase one? And does it allow us to have a true assessment come phase two? Those are concerning for us because we've seen in the past where other destinations, and let me say this real quick, and I want to make sure I get this out. The first 3 months of phase one, there is no other destination competition. All right, COVID-19 is the competition, and people's perceptions of COVID is the competition. So some people may be, maybe not. Some people are like, heck yeah, I'm in, and they move forward. But regardless, COVID's going to be the competition for at least the first 3 months and maybe a little longer. But it's that next phase, that next section is what's going to be a free-for-all, where destinations are going after very similar markets. And unfortunately, that is the money, that's going to be the money side. And so if we have an opportunity to find a way to kind of imprint on our market share, it's going to maybe pick up the difference between what we lost in, say, military graduation not being sustainable, like Phil mentioned, or something where we're mitigating the loss of economic impact from motor coach business that's basically erased for 2020. And that's where we see the opportunity. Listen, the businesses aren't saying, give me the money per se. They want the opportunity to have customers. And in order to do that, the DMO has an obligation to do the marketing, to set the stage and the funnel for our small businesses that are in our area for the travel and tourism industry to have an opportunity to go after those customers. And that truly is what this breaks down to, is our ability to recruit new visitors and customers to our marketplace to help provide cash revenues for our industry in the immediate, but also down the road to build an opportunity for demand so that we can have the revenue projections for everyone's, both small business owner and local government budgets.
Thank you, Rob. Mr. May,
Could I piggyback on that?
you may.
Thank you. Rob, I missed the beginning, so you may have mentioned this. But anecdotally, and what I've seen, the little I've been out, I question whether there are businesses. I can't speak to the accommodations, but are our businesses really ready? And I ask that because, as you say, our main competition is COVID, and it seems to me that one of the great opportunities would be those who want to escape the city, want to escape the crowds. One is, I guess Mike asked, the outdoors. If, and I understand Baja and you and USCB and maybe TCL are working on a safety protocol, but wouldn't it be incredible? We'd have to be careful with the words, but becoming known as the single most safe place to be. If you're going to go out, you know that the businesses are all in tune, that you have the sprays, you have the masks, you have the regular wipe downs. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I didn't go to the Baja meeting, but there was some sort of an idea of certifying people, like the state certifies restaurants. Well, if we could certify all of our primary tourist-oriented businesses with some sort of a sticker bragging on the fact that nobody is going to be safer in any place than Beaufort, it seems to me that that's a hook, because we don't have the density, because we do have the outdoor space, as long as the weather holds. We've got beaches that some people don't even know, like Coffin Point, where it's building a little bit, but there were 2 weeks ago, we were practically the only people there. Sunday, there were probably 30 people there. But it just seems to me, if there's some way we could get known at this point, particularly while COVID is the competition, if we could be known, being careful of legal liability, of being the safe place to go, that would be a way of not just waiting for COVID, but taking it head on.
Yeah, to speak to a little bit of that, yeah, that's the intent behind the program, is to give that some of those assurances that the participants in the business community are doing the things that they need to do to ensure the safety protocols are put in place and meeting the guidelines. We understand through the trends that are out there that most travelers, most customers are basically watching CDC and then state and then local and then individual assurances that the safety protocols are in place. And so we're just adding another layer to that to become that. I would love to be the safest place to visit during that time period. I think it would enhance it quite a bit, but at the same time, I think it's our job to work towards making those assurances, but also working with the businesses, which we have been at least sharing in the meetings that I've been in attendance, that, hey, guys, please set expectations well in advance. Now, set the expectations for the visitor, the customers in general. If you're going to be a business that requires certain things, then make that known. As long as it's, it's something we recommend, and make it happen.
Rob's being a little modest about the work he's been doing over the past 2 months, I think. Mayor, you're exactly right. And so I think we owe some gratitude to the Area Hospitality Association, to Rob at the CVB, even the city. I understand, I haven't checked with the city manager about this, but I understand we made a financial contribution to the program, and it does just that. And I've had a number of conference calls with restaurateurs, with hotel owners and managers, with attractions, with retailers, and in at least the conversations I've either heard about or been a part of, that's a lot of what he preaches, is following the safety protocols, number one, for both your staff and your customers, but number two, communicating exactly what you're doing in your business to your customers or to your potential customers. And I think that Safe Beaufort takes that a step further, and being able to put that badge on your window and giving some easy to understand guidance on what those protocols look like. And I'm just familiar with it because that's what we worked on all last week in both of my businesses, is how was it safe to reopen? You know, who needs to wear masks? How do we sanitize? What are those protocols? And I think Rob, his staff at the CVB and the Area Hospitality Association have been doing a really remarkable job behind the scenes, making those resources available for business owners. And the good news is I ventured out a little bit this weekend, and the businesses, most of the businesses that I visited, looks like they're really doing a remarkable job at being responsible, communicating what they're doing to folks, but also being safe within their enterprises.
I mean, I see it getting better. Yesterday, Sunday, we went somewhere and they weren't wearing masks until I walked in, and they all put masks on. But you know, they're just stories from residents who have gone out. And this is a week 10 days old, so this may be having an impact already. But who, after going to one or two places, went home and cooked dinner. And what I've told the businesses is that fear is something that doesn't go away, and it can really tarnish your reputation. So if we take the absolute opposite of that, and we are aggressively using as our marketing what it sounds like they're doing, that to me is a pretty good, for your point of view, Rob, given your success, a wonderful free media story, is how the merchants have gotten together and say nobody's going to be safer than we are. So it sounds like from Stephen and from you that the groundwork, and from what I've heard, the groundwork's being laid. It's just a question of packaging and getting it out there.
Yeah.
Rob, what is the easiest way for people to get the information about the safe commitment?
To visit the website at bftsafe.org. So that's bftsafe.org. And for those people to go on there and log on and kind of see the recommendations and take the commitment first, and then get ready for the training aspect that comes along with it, which enhances. And most destinations are offering the commitment, the pledge, but the next step is the biggest asset to it. And so, you know, I think that's the one step necessary that, you know, I know from Bill's standpoint, from being a part of that conversation with that I've been a part of, is that's one of the things that separates the destination and the whole. We have been preaching that from the start, is that when it comes time to invite people back to the area, you know, their expectations are going to be different than they ever have been. And it may look different for each individual visitor. You know, Mayor, your expectations may be different than mine. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that anyone's expectations are lowered. It just means that we have to try to meet those experiences and meet those expectations with a great experience, and be open to the responses that coming. And that's part of that. But I will tell you, though, is that the businesses want the opportunity to do that. And I think one of the best ways that my organization can help is to put the marketing in place and the advertising in place to start filling the funnel back up. You know, I've already laid out to you guys already that we're putting the money that we had paused our advertising and pulled from savings on contracts that we were able to remove and put that back in the marketplace. But, you know, there are some shortfalls there. And so, you know, if the city has an opportunity to participate in that level with us in some format, and we can work towards some things, and I think those will all be encouraging. But at the end of the day, our businesses want to have the customers come back to their shops, to their hotels, to their restaurants, and they want to have an opportunity to serve them. And ultimately, that is how the economy will reignite in our local market, especially from a tourism and hospitality thing is when a new dollar comes to market and exchanges hands for a public good, service, or item. And that's what our organization does, is set the funnel for that through marketing. We leave it to the private sector to handle the transaction. And we all work like the devil to make sure that we're meeting visitors' expectations with a great experience. And that part of it, I have all the faith and confidence in this destination that we'll be able to meet that. Just going to take a lot of work to get there.
Sure.
Maybe you can start to get it out, and that will be an incentive for them to move a little quicker.
Yeah,
So-
you will find the Buford Safe Plug all over BufordSC.org right now. It's one of our leading things, but part of our ad package is because it's one of those assurances we're going to have.
Good, thank you.
Yep.
If I can jump in too, from the city point of view, it will be up on our website. We are one of the sponsors, and the logo they have, et cetera, and the training is all the things that we're supporting and doing. So it'll be on our website, PR, everything that it's a good program that they have, and we think it's critical. At the same time, I also want to say that we've been working closely with Rob. I think we've been talking weekly as to what his needs are from an operational point of view. Today, we talked to verify our projections as to what we see from a revenue loss, et cetera. And I think the cooperation, I won't say spot on, but pretty close to what we saw, where the drop of business will be and why. So again, we've had a great cooperative spirit program with Rob, and we appreciate that.
Good.
Thank you, Rob. I really appreciate the presentation, and everybody go on site. It is very, very complete on the website. Mr. Mayor, would you like to take over?
No, I'd like you to, this is your meeting.
Yeah, you're just having too much fun. Well, Rob, thanks so much. John, it's a pleasure to have John O'Toole with us here from Beaver County Economic Development Corp. He's going to update us on activities that are going on in the Commerce Park.
And I'm joined by Charlie Stone. Council, thanks for having us. I'll try to be fairly brief. I think Charlie might share a screen with you a little later on. But the work that Rob is doing is a great complement to the work we're doing. We find that of the 174 leads that we're dealing with, 60% of them have a foot in Buford, usually through hospitality and tourism, or our part-time residents here. So we're doing quite well, working closely with Rob's organization, and the expertise that he shares with us is appreciated. We've been also working with Smarter Chaos and Nate Schaub, and have settled on as you can see by both Charlie and my backgrounds, good for your business, good for your soul. As we come up on the end of our second complete fiscal year, we're over $100 million in investments in this diverse economy in our county and in your community. USCB estimates, actually USCB and Clemson, their economists estimate that over 7 years, our work will result in a $1.7 billion impact in the region and over $11 million of tax revenue to the county and the municipalities. We do think a lot of the good work we're doing with Bill and the council are paying off. We think there's going to be a movement towards safe communities, a movement movement towards a non-urban area, which bodes well for Buford. Just as I was looking at my LinkedIn, I got a message from a gentleman in Lebanon, Indiana. And he sent a message saying Buford remains his top choice for a headquarters site. So that bodes well. I just, as there's a lot of concern for COVID-19 and the impact on our economy, it seems clear we did probably settle into a recession on March 1st, and God willing, it'll be 9 months, it may be a year, but a lot of the good work that we're doing will pay off. I will say that during this time, people have remained bullish on Beaufort County and Beaufort itself. We have over $69 million worth of projects that are pressing forward right now. You know, they're in that $100 million and some are early pipeline. But whereas you would have thought in March or April, people may have pulled their foot off the gas pedal, we have this level of projects still moving ahead, I should say. Magnus is working with Dave Prichard and Charlie Stone on some issues regarding Lot 10, but it appears they will settle on Lot 10 in the Beaufort Commerce Park. Charlie has secured a grant for Lot 15, and we're out to bid on that. So we'll be preparing a site for another development. And with that, I'll turn it over to Charlie to talk about a proposal, and it's called Project Garden. And these folks have submitted a letter of intent and would like to pursue Lot 13. So Charlie?
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen here. Give me 1 second. Can everybody see
Yes.
my screen as well as hear me? Great.
Yep.
All right. Project Garden, we've redacted the name because it's confidential as the company works through this process, but it's a lead that was originally brought to us by the South Carolina Department of Commerce in April of 2019. And the company, they're a manufacturer of glass components for electronics, as well as the automotive industry. In April of 2019, when they visited with the State Department of Commerce, we toured them through several existing buildings in Beaufort. And at the time, they were also looking at the Georgetown and the Myrtle Beach, South Carolina areas. And in March of this year, they returned to Beaufort with Beaufort as their top choice for their project. And during that visit, they met with Bill Prokop, as well as Reese and Stephen Murray, as well as completed additional tours of Beaufort. And after that visit, they decided that their preference was actually to build their own facility, a new industrial building in the Commerce Park. And on May 15th, the company submitted a letter of intent to John and I to purchase 3 acres at the Beaufort Commerce Park, which would be lot 15 at the park, for $15,000 per acre. And they would like to construct 15,000 square feet on the site. The company also is asking for an option on 3 additional adjacent acres, which would be on a portion of lot 13, to ensure that they would have eventual room to expand to up to 30,000 square feet. That would invest around 6 new jobs. And I'll scroll down so y'all can see the rest of this summary. But in regards to the land use at the park, I think Stephen and John would echo this, but the Beaufort County Economic Development Corporation, our position is that we don't want speculative investors buying up land and park and then holding on to that property, nor do we want companies taking more land than they actually need for their facilities. So therefore, we would look to work with Dave Burchard and the planning department at the city, engineers of the company to review the company's site plan and determine the necessary acreage that the company project, and that way we can ensure that we don't sell them more than they actually need. Also, as part of our agreement, we would look to stipulate that the developer would have to grant within a year. And if they did not break ground with it, we look to have the property revert back to the city's ownership. And if that was unable to do so, the city an additional $15 per acre. We fully expect that the company would be okay with these stipulations. And today we're looking to recommend the conceptual approval to the deal to City Council. So I think, that's a really quick run through, but I think at this time, John and I are happy to take questions on the deal.
Thank you, Charlie. Appreciate that. Council, any questions on the specific areas here. Stephen, you're a little bit more familiar with it. Why don't you lead off with a little bit of insight?
I think it's awesome. I think it's exactly the kind of, we use this baseball analogy all the time about we're not going to hit a home run of an auto manufacturer. It just doesn't really fit. We don't have the workforce or the infrastructure. So we want to hit singles and doubles. This is exactly the type of clean, advanced manufacturing and existing business that runs a great shop. Good folks. I think will be good corporate partners, and just commend John and Charlie for keeping the lead going. As you heard, they worked this thing for over a year. It's exciting to finally start seeing some activity. We with Geismar maybe 2.5 years ago, we got Glassworks going in, a number of businesses. So I'm supportive. I think this is a good deal for us. It's more value per acre than what we paid for that. Maybe if you figure in our carrying cost, and I think John and Charlie are putting in some great clawbacks if the project doesn't decide to move forward and we get the dirt back, because exactly that, we didn't buy this for speculation. We didn't buy this to provide secondary jobs. We bought this property to diversify our economy and provide a different type of economic opportunity for our citizens than what's currently available. And if we didn't need another reason why economic diversification is so important, but I think COVID and this pandemic has given us another reason on why economic diversification of Beaufort County and the city of Beaufort's economy is absolutely critical to our long-term sustainability. And we keep hitting singles and doubles like this. I'm confident we'll get there, and we're really starting to move the needle.
Thank you. I agree. There's no question that this really highlights the need for the diversification. I think it's a great opportunity. Other members of council, questions?
We're becoming the glass capital of South Carolina with glasswork and all this thing.
A lot of saying.
Might be.
Well, I asked, that's a great question, Phil. I asked the guys, it was like, hey, do they know Jeff? Do they know Glassworks? Is that why they're coming here? There was no relation. I think the hope is that there will be a relationship. And then generally what you hear about in economic development is this cluster strategy. As certain industries move into your area, the suppliers and the folks that support that industry, they naturally sort of gravitate your area. So glass manufacturing and processing wasn't on our list, 18 months ago, guys? But it certainly is today.
Couldn't have anything more transparent. I think it's a great opportunity.
Oh, that was funny.
That was good.
Couldn't resist.
Good one, Mike McPhee.
Hey.
No, it looks great. I hope it all happens.
Well, certainly exciting on the employment side, because I just got some information from Jenny Kozak earlier today on our unemployment in our county. And in March of 2020, we were at 2.7%. In April, 1 month later, it jumped up to 11.9%. We're still below the state in the US in terms of overall percentage in April, but I think a lot of that's probably likely due to the military and military-related employment that we have here. But, we need to diversify as much as we can and get away from the tourism business, because that's what's really affected that big bump, I think, in 1 month.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, can I add a couple? I agree with you. I also think the unemployment numbers are higher. I think federal stimulus and paycheck protection is propping up unemployment right now. But as Rob Wells pointed out, that's going to start running out for people starting within the next 2 weeks, and then we'll go on for about another 6 weeks. And I also think in terms of economic development, our goals in diversification around advanced manufacturing and technology isn't to displace tourism and hospitality. I think those industries are critical to our economy. They have been for a long time, and they will be for a long time moving forward. Today they are the goose that lays the golden egg. Not quite as golden today, which is why I think we need additional marketing to get that industry rolling again. But I think the idea is diversification and strengthening our economy and making us more sustainable by adding a completely different industry sector that will help us weather these types of either pandemic storms or hurricanes, or whatever it is that we're going to have to face in the future. So again, not about displacing hospitality and tourism,
Right.
but about complementing industries and diversifying our economy.
Sure, absolutely. Guys, it sounds great. Thank you very much for the update. Any final words, John, before you leave us with your great, good for your business, good for your soul?
No, that's the bottom line. Thank you. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to contact Charlie and I. And Charlie's worked this lead from inception to the point we're at. So I just want to give proper recognition to Charlie for the good work he does. Thank you.
And thank you, Charlie, for.
If I could jump in for a minute too, a couple other things, just so the public doesn't misunderstand something. John's done a great job, and Charlie, of also getting incentives from the Commerce Department, et cetera. So the city, where they see incentives, et cetera, they're not coming from the city. It's coming from our partners, I'll say the Commerce Department and others. And just so people don't think, well, gee, what about this incentive, that? Ours, we're investing land and an opportunity here to create jobs. And I totally agree with everything Stephen said. Diversity is so important. So John and Charlie have done the complete package here. They've got support from us from the state as well as the county. And I think this is a golden opportunity for us, and I appreciate what they've done.
Good point.
Before you leave, John, just could I ask you one question? I've spoken to Stephen about this and I've spoken to Bill, but I have a friend who's in technology, has run some rather large companies, who continues to send me news stories from California and New York about companies looking to go to more comfortable places, let me say, more affordable places to be. And I wonder if, and you know, I raise this with them, and maybe I don't need to again, because I'm sure they will have, but to do some really rifle sharp marketing towards those types of industries, with like personal invitations to come, because they're going to go somewhere. And you know, Pittsburgh got a lot of them at one point when they left Boston and they left San Francisco area. But now my sense is, like many people, they're going to want something a little more wide open, something where there's a little more air, a little more space. It's, you know, I don't want to ask you to find a needle in a haystack, but there's got to be someone who knows how to do that, who can find us that you come up with a type of person, type of business, and find a database to which we could actually just literally come see us.
Right. Yeah, we actually this year, you know, and it kind of fits with the question that I think Stephen had asked Rob in the earlier presentation. But this past year, we worked with 3 lead generators, and we chose our prospects on states that had a hostile legislative session towards business and industry. And last year, that brought us to New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Illinois. And interestingly enough, if you look at Rob's business, a lot of people from that area have an introduction, a familiarity with Beaufort County. So we are building on that. With the dollars that we're saving in this COVID-19 time, we're able to keep the budget request down to each municipality and the county, but we're going to take those savings and do more work with lead generators to identify exactly the kind of leads that you're indicating, Mayor. Companies that are looking to either expand or move in the next 2 years. And we had 4 trips up to the north last year, and we'll have even more trips in that direction. In addition to that, we'll be working with SCA and the Department of Commerce on international leads, because there'll be companies looking at what's transpired here and looking at the delicate balance of supply chain and having that supply chain offshore. And so with the work we're going to do to create a landing pad at 500 Carteret Street, we'll have another, I'll say, a strong hand to play in terms of getting people down here and promising them 90 days of free entry into our market. And we think once they get here, they'll make the investment here.
if I can jump in, John did a really great presentation to the County Finance Committee. Was that last Thursday, John? Last Friday?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
I'm sure that's available online at the county website. So I'd encourage any of you to go to check it out. He goes a little deeper into the numbers. And I don't have them right in front of me, but I'm sure Charlie knows this. John may not. Charlie's the number keeper over at the Economic Development Corp. But our marketing budget is double, maybe close to triple what it has been previously. And so I think, Mr. Mayor, you're exactly right. We're starting to target and get our message out there to those folks. I think that article that you sent out from the Wall Street Journal, the latest survey said 66% of technology workers in major metropolitan areas are interested in finding another destination to relocate to after COVID.
I hate to think there's anything good about COVID, but it does create an opportunity to a little bit of a hole. And we can be small, we can be safe. We've got exactly what you need. So, and when Rob said, it just struck me when Rob said, our competition's COVID. Well, let's take the hand we're dealt, play the cards right, and try to leverage it into something that
we have a very targeted universe on LinkedIn. And Mayor, your email that went out, imagine being stuck with parents and 2 children in a $1.5 million 2-bedroom apartment. That's had 919 views in our site selector real estate consultant universe. So we take messaging like that, and hopefully you don't mind us using it in that way. But it's drawn about it's gotten pretty good viewership. So thank you.
Good. I'll write more.
Okay, good.
Thank you both very much. Really appreciate you being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, Mr. City Manager, you are up to talk about the 21 budget and accommodations tax grants.
Yes. Well, as we said last week, we would be monitoring our budget and our projections, our revenues and expenses on a weekly basis. And we had a few positive, I call it positive events happen this last week that provided us with opportunities to make some adjustments to the proposed budget we gave you last week. And in summary, we were able to make, in our opinion, 2 major adjustments. First, we eliminated the proposed $10 additional fee for stormwater fund. The stormwater will stay just as it's been, both at level revenue, and no additional fee will be necessary. We also were able to reduce our road fee from $25 per vehicle to $20 per vehicle. Now I'm going to ask Kathy Todd, our finance director, to go over the adjustments that we made in summary so that you'll see that we were able to keep our budget balanced and be able to reduce the fees that we thought we needed before. But again, what I'm talking about is we got some retirements, we got some extra revenue that we didn't anticipate, and that helped us set the stage for what Kathy will explain to you. Kathy?
Mayor and Council, as Bill had indicated, we made some additional adjustments to the proposed budget, and we decreased the road fee from $25 to $20 as a result, generating about $192,420 versus the $240,000 that was previously in there. And to kind of offset some of that, we had, through the county's participation with the VA office rent, they had agreed to an additional $1,000 a month for rent. They've been paying a base utility fee of $300 per month for the last, the past season of their renting the city hall. And so in addition to that $300 per month for the utilities, they'll be paying an additional $1,000. So that added $12,000 of revenue to the existing budget. Also, BDC has agreed to resume their rent lease agreement, and that's been included in the general fund of $1,050. Some of the other things that we were, there's a new military contract for shared services. So miscellaneous revenue was increased from 10,000 to 20,000 as a result of that. And in talking with David, we had planning, we had permits and fees at 400,000 in the budget, and they've been strong. And so we added 25,000 to that. So 425 in those fees. So that increased revenues and compensated for the decrease in the road fee from $25 to $20. In addition, those were primarily impactual on the general fund. We had several expenditure reductions as well that we became aware of in the last week of some retirements. One in particular is Robbie Anderson. I'm not sure that's public, but is put in for retirement before the end of the year. And then another position that we thought was going to continue in next year is also going to be leaving by June 30th. And that though there's actually two other positions that's occurring, and neither one of them were going to be refilled. So we've got 3 vacancies that are going to be occurring in this year, and we're freezing those moving into next year's budget and removing those costs along with benefits from the budget. Along with that, we decreased several of the expense categories further in non-departmental, in City Hall, with City Council, with City Manager, each department, including in the General Fund as well as in the Parks and Tourism Fund. And as a result of the stormwater, we took out the $10 increase in stormwater, bringing that revenue down back to where it currently sits at $1.1 million. And so with that, we had to make corresponding decreases in the stormwater fund just to balance, so that the excess in the revised is the basically the $64,000 mower that can be purchased with the bond proceeds as an allowable cost of the bond. So with that, we sent those revised revisions to council. And would you like me to show what the revised overall summary is?
I think it would help.
Okay.
If you can.
Let me go ahead and share that.
While she's doing that, Bill, did I hear you say that you were going to drop the stormwater fee? Drop the adding the $10 fee?
That is correct. There'll be no, stormwater will stay just as it is, both revenue and the fee. Fee will remain at $135.
So can you all see that consolidated recommended budget for 2021, the revised? Okay. So what happened was, as a result of the reduction back of the stormwater fund down to 1 million, we had to shift some costs. So part of the director of public facilities had majority of his salary and benefits going into the stormwater fund because of the amount of effort that has been provided. However, the fund was not able to support all of it once we reduced that cost back. So those costs had to shift back into the general fund. Another component that we learned in the last week was we had gotten more final numbers from our insurance broker on our health insurance benefits. And those did go up considerably. And that was a little bit more than what we had planned in the budget. If you recall, for the benefit, I was using a straight percentage based on what we anticipated or were hoping the overall health benefits would impact. But in reality, it's a 3% greater than what we had budgeted. And so those costs are now included in the budget. So there was some shifting of some dollars from payroll, salary and benefit allocations. And then the benefit increase from the health insurance was added as well to bring the general fund back into budget, the parks and tourism back into budget, and the stormwater fund back into budget. Another change that we made is in the state accommodations fund, where we increased, and that's probably better to show you on the actual screen itself. So bear with me while I flip to that page. Wish there was a faster way to do this without it being. There we go. Oops, too many hits.
That's what happens when you leave your finger on the key.
That's for sure. What happened to it all together?
Oh, it disappeared.
It did disappear. Let me,
It disappeared.
I hope I didn't just lose. Let me share that again. Let me get to the screen itself.
Kathy, while you're trying to find that, if I can jump in just real quickly, I know that Yvette had some questions on our previous topic, and I'm not sure if this was regarding, was that on John and Charlie's presentation, Yvette?
No questions, just comments, council. And there was one comment made by Jonathan Sullivan regarding John O'Toole and Charlie Stone. All it says is, thank you, Stephen, well said. We have two more comments from Rob's presentation. Would you like me to read those?
Sure.
Sure.
The first one is, Nan, great question about the return of travelers. People are starting to travel. Without graduations, we have lost roughly 46% of our overnight consumers. Our CVB needs funding for additional reach. The second comment by Jonathan Sullivan as well. Leisure consumers are getting back to market, not on planes, but in cars. CVB needs to be able to capture this consumer for our market. This is the need for funding.
Thank you, Yvette. I appreciate it. My apologies. I was a little
That's
slow
okay.
getting the response back to you. I'll try to be more conscious in the future.
Yeah, do better next time, will you, Mike?
Yeah, wet noodles, sorry.
I think Mike's doing a great job.
Easy for you to say. Okay, so here we back are with our budget.
Kathy Todd.
Thank
Back
you, ma'am.
to the budget. So here's the state accommodations. We also made some modifications in that fund as well, taking into consideration the concerns that were expressed last week, and increase the DMO back to where it was in the current budget of $166,500 to assist with the marketing. And then also added another $50,000 to the grants. We took that money out of the $150,000 that was earmarked to reimburse the general fund for the capital needs of the arsenal, leaving the balance of $67,300 to cause that reimbursement, and then with the intention that either excess actual revenues that come in will help, where we can come before council and ask for a budget amendment and move additional money back to the general fund, or recapture it next year in a subsequent budget, or over a period of time, depending upon the length of the recovery and how strong recovery is.
And if I can just jump in for a minute on that too. And if Rob's still on, he could verify. Rob and I had talked. One of the most important things to him was to see if we could not get him to stay at the level he was at this year. I'm talking the operating part, the 166,000. So we increased that. That was his first choice. And his feeling was if we could put anything extra into the allocation for grants, he felt confident that when he puts his program together, the grants would come there. So as Kathy said, it's 100,000. We try to position it in what Rob's desire was, and that's the way we did it. Doesn't mean it can go a different way, but that's what he felt the most, when I say secure with, was doing it that way.
And no additional funding right now, or what? I'm confused.
In the new budget, basically it's an additional 100,000 in the new budget starting July 1st.
So does that mean you're spreading out the 150?
It means we're taking 100 out of the 50 and putting it into the state accommodations into the DMO.
Right.
And we're not planning at this point of putting it back in the budget into the general fund. Only 50 of it's going back.
Okay.
Well,
And that makes
the
the CDBG
balance
full?
of 67.3.
And the idea is to spread that over a couple of years, hopefully, assuming things recover.
We did not get that far. I'll let Kathy answer that. That's a council choice, whether we just leave it as an investment or do we say we want it back to the general fund.
Any thoughts on that, Kathy?
On what Bill just said, it
Yeah.
really is. It's up to council. Right now, we increased, Rob back to where he was. So that's why it's a little bit higher than, it's a little less than 50,000 that went to the DMO. 50,000 did get added to the grant funding to bring it to the 166,724, leaving 67,300. Now, if council would like, that we can always change that capital and how or when it goes and replenishes the capital, the committed fund balance for capital is really up to council.
Okay.
Just so I'm clear. You add an additional 50,000 to the grant program?
Correct.
Okay, in grants, we typically process in September, they're allocated by October?
They are typically approved by city council in October. The money is not allocated because it's a reimbursement basis.
Reimbursed, right.
And so the activity has to occur and then they have to submit the reimbursement request. That typically doesn't happen until late spring, sometimes summer and early fall. So towards the end of fiscal year 2021 is usually when we start getting the reimbursement requests.
Okay. And the 50,000 though, does it have to go to the grant program or could it be allocated directly to the CVB for recovery marketing if council desired?
If council desired, you could reallocate more of it to the DMO. Of course, with the state accommodations fund, you do have the 50-mile radius restriction. So it does have to market funding outside the 50-mile radius.
Okay.
So did Rob get PPP money?
I don't know the answer to that. If Rob is still available, he probably
there.
That.
Be interesting to know if he did,
Hold on. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So somebody asked a question. I'm trying to navigate here. So
Yeah, I was just curious as to, did y'all get any PPP money?
yes, we qualified for PPP money.
Okay. So that was that's an 8-week period of overhead and salaries, right?
That's correct. So we were able to retain our staff.
What, Stephen?
Just salaries, limited utilities and rent.
Right. Well, 75% is salaries. The rest is utilities and rent.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
How much was that?
So Kathy, in the shift of the money from the capital expenditures into the tourism grants and into the DMO, and then we can make a decision from the standpoint of any of the additional monies if we wanted to remove, if we wanted to absorb more of the capital improvements to the arsenal back into the general fund. Is that what you were saying?
That is correct. So that 67,300 that's currently placeholding in capital, if council chooses, they can move all of that into the DMO and tourism grants, or reduce it further or increase it more. And then the decision as to whether or not the timing of the replenishment to the general fund occurs out of excess revenue or whether it occurs in subsequent budgets or not at all is again a council decision.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, my suggestion, instead of putting the 50,000 into the grant process and us having to wait 4 months to be able to put it, at least 4 months to be able to put it into the marketplace, that there's a real need for recovery marketing and that be allocated to the CVB as a part of this budget process that would be released as early as July 1.
But aren't these reimbursements that have already been granted? These are for grants that we did last year in August.
No, these are grants that will occur this in September of 2020 and then approved typically by council in October of 2020.
So we're fully funded on our grant request from last year?
Correct. And then the diagram that we went through last week, between it depletes fund balance down to about $10,000 going into the new year. So if we funded DMO straight out of state accommodations initially, general fund would have to provide the cash until the cash comes in where it can be reimbursed back to the general fund because state accommodation fund would not have the cash availability to do that.
Right. And that is on what you propose will come in through state accommodations?
Correct.
Okay.
To Stephen's point, I mean, I think that if it were stayed in the grant, the 50,000, it's going to get spread awfully thinly. And that if Rob had it as a sort of a crash program, I'll go back to the idea of safe place to do a marketing campaign to get us cranked back up. I think it would have a greater impact than waiting and distributing it through the grant process in smaller amounts to organizations.
Mr. Mayor and Steve, I just want to again emphasize, this was a discussion with Rob. Rob can make his comments. He wanted to first get his DMO money up, and then it was his suggestion that we said he could go either way to put it into the grant funding. So we're happy to go either way, but Rob and I had that discussion.
I appreciate that, but he just gave a presentation that said he was looking for $314,000 for recovery marketing. He's got $120,000 of either his own savings or savings over the last 2 months. I appreciate Nan's question about paycheck protection because I assume that he's able to do the 120 because he had some savings in payroll for the past 2 months. And now if we're saying we can find 50 to put either in a grant process or we have the authority to go ahead and grant it to him so that he can put it in the marketplace. I mean, 50% of our hospitality and tourism workers are currently out of business. There's tremendous uncertainty about a core part of our Paris Island graduates families coming back. Bus tour business is basically eroded overnight. I mean, if ever there was a time to put additional marketing into the marketplace to bring more customers, I would argue that now is the time. It is raining out for our tourism and hospitality businesses, of which this city relies extremely heavily on. I mean, we're going to go through the parks tourism budget here in a second. I mean, we pull over $1 million for police services out of hospitality taxes and local accommodations taxes. So this isn't a handout to marketing companies. This isn't a handout to tourism and hospitality. This is an investment for us to be able to get our economy back rolling and get our revenues achieving projections.
I agree with you, Stephen.
I don't disagree either. I misunderstood part of the grant part, which I'm totally fine with it going to DMO.
Yeah, I'm okay.
I mean, realistically, what events are going to ask for reimbursement given the slowdown of the events that are being positioned right now and or canceled?
Right.
Well,
Mr.
I think by October, or September, October, we'll hopefully have a little better handle on, the COVID situation, the tourism situation, how close our projections. I mean, because I'd hate to be Kathy Todd right now. I know I've been a little tough on the budget, but I have a tremendous amount of respect for what the finance department is doing with their crystal ball. But I think if we have the resources now, again, to sort of prime the marketing pump, we can always say no to grant applicants for the upcoming year if we don't have the revenues. We can pull that back.
Absolutely.
Mr. McPhee, please go to Miss Yvette. You have some timely comments for this discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Berthoff. Ms. Yvette, please, would you add some comments from our viewers?
Absolutely. We have three, and these are all relative to the accommodations tax piece of this conversation. The first one is from BMO Desai. It would be great to do it over 3 years, 50,000 per year, or find dollars in the general fund. He was talking about the DMO.
Okay.
Jonathan Sullivan says, Bill and Kathy, this is a start. There is no better investment with an $8 to $1 from the DMO. Again, Jonathan Sullivan says, please be careful. TDEC should make recommendations prior to cancel awarding funds. This is how Turk regulate, and without an application, this could be a violation of state statute. That's it.
Thank you. Kathy, with regard to Turk, these are allocated. These aren't allocated yet.
The state law specifies that the first 25,000 of state accommodation funds to the general fund in the way of we do it in the way of a transfer, followed by 5% of that balance. Then 30% of the remaining balance goes to the DMO. The balance of those resources go to the TDAC committee for determination on the grant process. And that's where traditionally the CVB has put in an application for additional funding in addition to their DMO services for either designated destination marketing or additional destination marketing or visitor center operations or some other targeted project or activity.
Okay.
And I'll just also add that with discussion with Rob, he was aware that nobody was trying to bypass the committee. And I totally agree that putting the marketing money where we need it right now, and it also may show that the county may be wanting to put some money towards it too, if we're doing our share. So again, this was just balancing of the discussion. And again, it was a couple of weeks ago that Rob and I talked about that. So it makes no difference to us. Putting it where the marketing and instead of into the grant thing is fine. But the discussion had with Rob, he was happy at that time to say, let it go to the grant committee. And I think they would listen to me. So there was no intention of bypassing anybody.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Other questions for council? Anything from Yvette? Any other comments from the outside?
I do have a few more comments relative to this discussion. Jonathan Sullivan says, Council, thank you. As Stephen has said, this is an investment. It provides a return and gets our business back to work and provides a return to city budget. BMO Desai says, not the DMO, the capital reimbursement.
He was referring to the 50,000 he was referencing previously about the 150. So
that's correct.
Got it. Thank you. Council, any other questions?
I have some questions about the Parks and Tourism Fund, if Ms. Todd's finished with the summary.
I am done with the summary, yes.
Okay.
Would you like me to flip to the Parks and Tourism Fund?
you don't mind me sharing my screen, you might mind my chicken scratch here. Let's see. We've been trying to make the switch from paper to digital through this whole thing, and it's working okay. Okay, so Kathy, this is the budget detail that you provided to council last Tuesday, and so I went through and looked at some of the lines, and so you see the revenues that come in, hospitality fees, local accommodations. But a few things I wanted to sort of ask about. This is the police comment. 1.1 million out of those fees go to support the police department, about 25% of the total operational budget of the police department. But this was in the public parks line. So I just wanted to ask a few questions about this. We've got park furniture listed for $5,000, mulch for city-owned parks and open spaces, $8,000, Arbor Day tree, $2,000, painting of all metal at Waterfront Park of $10,000. This isn't the challenge that these are needed things. I like nice parks and certainly want us to take care of our stuff and not defer maintenance until it gets even more expensive to maintain. But given the uncertainty around revenues, are these not some things that we might be able to add to the list of things that we would come back to in 6 months or so if the revenues are there? And I'm not so much asking questions about that. I'm just kind of putting it out there for some thought for staff. Also, there's I see how we removed the Waterfront Park paver sinkhole repairs, but we did leave in bush hogging of $10,000 for the bluff area. And I did have a question. 2 pages down from now is another $9,000 for bluff maintenance. And is that the same bluff or is it a different bluff? And I'll come down and I'll come back.
Bill, you're muted.
Give me 1 second. Let me come down to, sorry, I've been awfully slow here. Bay Street Bluff right here, this item is another $9,000, so $19,000 for bluff maintenance. Is that two locations or is that the same?
David, I could answer. I've checked those questions that we discussed this afternoon. The 10,000 for the bush hogging, that's done once every 4 to 5 years because of the growth. It happens to be, it's the 4th or 5th year right now, and we've had people starting to complain that it's getting too high and it's growing. So it was put in the budget that we might have to do it again. This is a year budget. Doesn't mean we're going to do this before January or we'll do it at all. We're watching it. The other 9,000 is we have pipes, drainage pipes, et cetera. That's regular maintenance that's done for the whole bluff area. It goes beyond the contract with the greenery to cut the area beyond the seawall. So
okay. Drainage, would that not, if it was a drainage issue, would that not come under the stormwater fund for maintenance and repair, or is that different?
That is different than putting it in the storm. The stormwater fund is all the activity that is funded by that stormwater fee, and that would not be those costs for the bluff and maintaining that area would be separate.
No, yeah, Bill just said something about drainage, and so that made me think stormwater. And then Southside Park, looks like we've held the line on phase 2 of the fence and also asbestos removal. And so I appreciate that those are deferred. But that was the other sort of broader question I have about the Parks and Tourism Fund. It seems like some parks we go into greater detail into maintenance cost, but then other parks really aren't identified and just sort of in general maintenance categories. And I was wondering the rationale behind the breakout of some, but not others. Obviously, Waterfront Park, that's a whole separate animal, and so I understand that. But some of the other parks, again, are not broken out like others.
The reason why Southside Park is that during with the PTAC committee and the commitment by previous councils that the city spend at least $25,000 annually dedicated to the Southside Park, and council in previous years wanted to see that separately. we don't break out the activity by every single park because the general ledger would be extremely long in that regard. And then not only that, but then how do you divvy out the costs associated with personnel and those types of contracts that are spread out through, you know, all of the parks and all of the areas.
So my question is, this 25,000 is, I mean, and then I remember the conversation a couple of years ago about identifying $25,000 annually to make park improvements. But that generally wasn't around maintenance of sort of ongoing maintenance to park, but it was about making improvements. And so while I've been a pretty loud advocate for investments in Southside Park, I would maybe, again, offer that this would be an issue, an item that we could defer until, one, as Bill Prokop has pointed out, we don't have a solid plan. I know there's some contention depending on who you ask about whether we have a plan or not. But as of today, we don't have something that everybody has agreed on. And again, given revenue situation, is that not something that we could defer for 6 months or so? And again, I'm not asking for an answer to any of these. Should we defer or not defer? These are just things that I wanted to point out. And then I have some specific questions just for my own knowledge. And so I did notice that Marina, there was a $14,000 expense, and that was also in previous years' budgets. Understanding that we have a contractor, what's our responsibility for Marina operations, and what is this $14,000 typically attributed to?
It is not property insurance. It is not relating to insurance. Again, it's another one of those categories that previous councils wanted to make sure that we were specifying some costs. So we do have responsibility for some of the activity and costs associated with the marina that fall outside of the contract. And so that's what that number is representing is I believe, Bill, you're a lot more familiar. Linda certainly is on the call and she's a lot more familiar with that as well. But I believe that the agreement requires us to handle the day-to-day type maintenance of the facility and over a certain dollar amount. And so that is, I believe, the balance.
Bill, you're muted.
If it's not on the water, it's our responsibility. If it's on land. So that's the maintenance, et cetera. Linda could give you more specific.
Okay. 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 And fine. I mean, obviously we have to maintain our facilities, and if we have contractual agreements with our vendors, we have to honor those. Information technology. I know Bill and we briefly talked about this afternoon, but we just installed some cameras a few years ago. And so another $20,000 line this year for cameras. I'm a proponent of cameras, supported the install for the first couple of versions that we did. This is another one where I ask, is this something that we could defer for 6 months or so and come back when we have the necessary? Is it that critical? Additionally, cleaning and applying oil to the furniture in the park of $5,000. I know we added a bunch of new furniture over the last couple of years. And that Bay Street Bluff, I think I covered that. So again, more furniture replacement of $10,000 in addition to the earlier one of $5,000. So there's $15,000 in furniture replacement that's been identified in the budget. And flags, it looks like 3 replacement flags at $350 each for a total of $1,050. And I bought a couple of flags, and just wondering if we have a special vendor we get those from, or could Pride of Place donate those? I mean, I hate to get this far down in the weeds, but given we're in kind of an unprecedented situation, I think we've got to look really closely at every dollar we spend, like the majority of our businesses are doing right now. So we'll keep going here. Pressure washing. So I noticed on the marina dumpsters that are used by a number of restaurants, we clean that monthly. So there's a quantity of 12. On pressure washing, the library contractor, for some reason, we do that 15 times a year, 3 additional times. And I was curious that why we do that one more than the marina, because my assumption is the marina is utilized more than the library, but that might be a wrong assumption on my part. And that brings me to a broader question, Kathy, about some of our services. I've noticed across departments, pest control, copier leases, pressure washing, printing, alarms, vehicle maintenance, and HVAC. Do we bid those services out as a city, and our departments are required to use those specific vendors, or are each departments allowed to contract with their own service provider?
The pest control is a citywide, and then it's the different departments have, there's an allocation, and different city departments have their components. So it's placed in their orgs. Okay. So that there's a true cost of the operations of their org. Same thing with copier. HVAC is predominantly in the facilities. That's where the Johnson Controls with the HVAC is captured, and that's split between the various buildings.
Okay. What about like alarm systems? Because I know there's quite a bit of disparity between facility alarm pricing, and I assume that's because of the complexity of the system in respect to each building.
That is correct. And some of them are covered by the Johnson Control, and some of them are outside of that because of the age, and they were not upgraded.
Okay. Is there any thought to on a couple of the vendors where departments have independent authority to contract with different vendors, if we are buying bulk, so to speak, would it be worthwhile, like we do with a few of our vendors, to look at some of those other ones and bid those out to get a more competitive price?
We have analyzed all of that in the past, and the pricing that the departments have been getting for some of the things that they do have discretion on is all within the same pricing that we would have gotten had we bid it out.
Okay.
So sometimes, and we do periodically look that over and see where there are ways that we can maximize the dollar.
Okay. Okay. And because I know by ordinance, we do a max of 5 years. Because I know you can get bids all day long and do nothing but try to find better
dollar limit as well. That gives the department head some discretion on certain things. Okay.
All right. So moving on down, I just point out that it's not much, $140 for three additional services, whether or not we're going to use that or not. It looks like under professional services, downtown department has proposed $6,000 for speakers for quarterly business workshops. In terms of speakers for business workshops or money for marketing to bring more customers in the door.
Or how to make businesses be better. That's important too.
I agree, but I guess we are considering a tax increase of 1.5 mil on operating, 1 mil on debt service, a $20 road fee that would go into the general fund for roads and sidewalks. And until this afternoon, a $10 stormwater fee. And so I think the conversation is going through our line budget and making sure that what we're asking on the expense side is really justifiable on the revenue side, especially if we're going to ask for more revenues from our businesses and residents in what's arguably one of the toughest economic events that we've been in our lifetime.
Well, I have to say though, just in 1 week, Kathy's told us that we've had all of these positive things. I mean, we've had retirements, we've had 3 vacancies in jobs, just decreased expense categories.
Right.
What's that mean in the next 2 weeks? We might have some other things show up that we're not aware of that will be positive.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you, Nan. I'm really hoping for the best. I hope that our revenues exceed our conservative projections. And so on most of these things, I'm not saying we shouldn't do them and they're not worthwhile. I'm simply saying, given the uncertainty of our revenues, so much so that we're asking for a tax increase in multiple areas, just putting on the table and having a conversation. So I guess, you're saying you're okay with $6,000 for quarterly business workshops. I personally think this is something we could maybe defer for 6 months or so.
I think we also have the flexibility within our budget analysis through the year to make adjustments in our budget where we see it necessary, either up or down.
That's a good point, but we do have to pass a balanced budget.
Yeah, we do.
Next month. So if
But then that's why we have Kathy Todd. I mean, I trust her, and I think that anytime she and Bill see an opportunity where, you know, things are looking up and they can change things, they will. I mean, yeah, we could go through this thing with a fine tooth comb, but.
No, I agree with you. And so if revenues exceed projections, then staff will come back to us and say, hey, really good news. The budget you passed, our revenues are going to exceed projections. What do you want to do with that money?
Right.
And that's where I think we keep this running list of things that we would like to do that would be nice, but maybe aren't mandatory right now. And then we can always release those funds towards these goals in October, November, December, January. I think Kathy and her team have said we're going to have to come back mid-year. And most of the finance directors across the county are saying the same thing. And I think it's prudent to be cautious. But we can't take the tax increase back, right? If our hospitality tax and our accommodations tax and business license receipts and our property tax exceed estimates, we can spend that money. But yeah, so anyways, 5257, there was support of community events for $16,000. Wayfinding signage for $2,500. I've got a little dot for Main Street annual dues because a little bit further down, sorry, I've got the sound of freedom going over the house. They're coming towards you, Mike.
Yep. I need to remind everybody that we're a minute before council starts.
Okay, sorry. But there's a $5,000 line down here for Main Street and an additional $4,000 for cultural district expenses. Okay, so anyways, I don't realize we're out of time here. I appreciate your patience with going through that. But if I added up all of the items that we just talked about, it comes out to about $120,970. So a 1 mil increase is $96,000. And this is just one department.
Council, if I might just make one comment, we can't shift any of the general fund costs to parks and tourism just because we need to fill a gap. So if you remove those costs from the Parks and Tourism Fund, you're not going to, and you reduce the revenues in the general fund, the costs in the general fund cannot be shifted back to the Parks and Tourism Fund. Just now, the option would be to shift more of the police, because typically police's allocation to Parks and Tourism is 35%, and that is another option.
Okay. And in the police budget, the only item I'll point out is I did notice on lease vehicles, there was approximately an $86,000 increase from lease vehicles from last year to this year. And so I would think that would give us a little bit of flexibility if we're holding the line on employees. Are we also able to hold the line on leases? Again, I've gone through the majority of departments, and I'm happy to talk offline if
I can answer that too.
We can, find some other areas to be able to hold the line to prohibit a tax increase this year if possible.
One real quick last thing that I wanted to make council aware of is we have to publish a public notice. And the data that is in the current revised recommended budget is the data that had to go in because we're on a deadline of that public notice being in the paper in order to satisfy the deadline by June 9th, which is first reading and the public hearing. So I wanted to just make you aware that when you see the newspaper, these numbers will be in the paper because we were at a hard deadline.
But they can be changed before we go to our readings.
Sure. Yeah.
Obviously.
That's a legal question. I think they can be changed at that meeting when we present first reading. But the public notice would have to stand, is my
Sure.
understanding.
Well,
Legal counsel would have to address the whether or not that it would require another public notice and a delay.
And I want to say real quick while I can, I mean, we could always call another meeting. We could, delay the public notice if we had to. But I wanted to point out that while I went through and I did point out some lines that I think we could probably defer, I do want to give Bill and Kathy and department heads a lot of credit, because there were a number of lines that there were significant reductions from last year. And so I do think that there are some significant cuts and pullbacks in this budget as presented. But I would argue that I think there is still some room that we can squeeze if we needed to.
Stephen, can you send us a copy of, or just scan a copy of what you just had highlighted there?
I sure can. Yep, I'd be happy. Yep.
Mr. Mayor, I think we need to move on to council.
Okay.
Council, we've got two comments, one comment and one question, real quick.
Okay.
Okay.
The first comment, email went back and finished it. It's relative to ATAX, where he stated not the DMO, the capital reimbursement. It would be great to spread the $150,000 arsenal repairs over 3 years at $50,000 per year, or find dollars in the general fund. Relative to this last discussion, budget, Jonathan Sullivan, should hotels and restaurants pay for business improvements? It seems parks and tourism budget pay for all downtown operations. Does business license fees contribute to this, et cetera, is the question.
Okay. Any comments? Okay. We'll adjourn this and we'll start the regular council meeting of May 26th. We'll call it to order. Mr. McPhee, would you like to do the?
I think we have to sign in.
I think we have to leave this meeting and sign into the other one, don't we?
Sean, are you online? Yvette?
We can stay here if we need to, if it's easier, and I'll just adjust the titles.
Okay.
Can I make a suggestion from a historic repository standpoint? It probably makes sense for us to stop one meeting and start a new council meeting, unless there's the ability, Sean, for you to break it up and then post it separately after the fact.
It can be done either way. We are recording to the cloud, so I do have the opportunity to download, and then I can cut that into 2 separate videos.
And recaption it.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And that can be done tonight.
Perfect.
So I think we've agreed we could go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Yes.
And I'd call on Mayor Pro Tem Mike McPhee, who's done a fabulous job this evening, to do an invocation.
If it is your practice to bow, please join us. Dear Father, we meet to serve our community, to use our resources wisely and well, to represent all members of our community fairly, and to make decisions that promote the common good. As trusted stewards, we seek blessings on these deliberations and our efforts tonight. May we act wisely and well. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, public comment. I'm sure it's probably a little early, but Yvette, do you have anything?
No, sir, nothing at this time.
Okay, well, we will, as normal, give people a chance to comment as we go through the agenda. So we'll now move to the minutes of the special council meeting of March 31st, 2020.
So moved.
And Mr. Cromer seconded.
Yes.
Okay, corrections. We'll start with Mr. Cromer.
I had reviewed them, but I did find one correction on page 3, the first line, at the next to last word. It's Zoom, but it should be a capital Z because it's referring to the medium that we're on. So that's the only change I
That's pretty good. Mr. McPhee,
No, I'm good.
Ms. Sutton,
No, I'm good.
Mr. Murray.
No, sir, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, I'm good too. Those in favor of accepting the minutes with the change, with the amendment, we'll vote. Mr. McPhee,
Aye.
Ms. Sutton,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Cromer,
Aye.
and Mr. Cosling says yes too. So we unanimously with the one adjustment. Old business, ordinance and leasing transitional parcels and parks and other property owned by the city for restaurants to provide outdoor dining service. This is second reading, and I think it's a project we've already started to quickly to help the businesses go.
Move to approve.
Have a motion,
Second.
and I have a second. Is there any discussion or report on how it's going?
Mr. Mayor, if I just want to make one just correction on the last paragraph of that, it says up to 400 square feet.
Correct.
It's going to be more than that in some place. It's going to go up to, I believe, it's going to go up to 650 square feet with one additional exception because of the way it's out. So it's just, we're going to be correcting the 400 square feet, but everyone has an individual lease, which we will bring to you by next week. And I'm going to let Linda give you an update of the ones that she has agreements, and Bill Harvey's preparing the leases right now.
Okay. Linda, you want to do that?
Sure. We have Luther's with 200 square feet, Plum's 177 square feet, Common Grounds, the West Street Extension, that's another 224 square feet. Huon Bay, they've also got about 560 square feet. Saltus, we laid it out, and it's a much larger parcel, but we can kind of bring that down a little bit because it's larger than the 600 square feet, 650. And then Mazes, we've got the lease of their sidewalk to the curb, and Old Bull Tavern. We've got them the sidewalk as well as one of the parking spaces that's directly in front of their restaurant.
Okay.
So that's a total of 7.
Okay, good. I guess we need to amend the ordinance to take care of them expanding it from 400, for the record, from 400 to 650 square feet.
Who made the second? But if they'll withdraw it, I'll withdraw mine and amend.
Mr. Cromer made the second.
I did. I'll withdraw.
Okay. So I would modify my motion to approve as proposed, with the exception of the increase in square footage to what's the appropriate number, Linda?
650.
But no greater than 650 square feet.
I have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion?
I think it's a great idea.
No, it's great. Whatever they need.
Thank you, Linda, for jumping on this and making it happen. I think it's super awesome.
Yep.
Kudos. Thank you.
Anyone else?
No.
Okay, we'll vote then. Mr. Cromer?
Aye.
Mr. Murray?
Aye.
Ms. Sutton?
Aye.
Mr. McPhee?
Aye.
And I vote aye, so unanimously we've passed on second reading that ordinance. Excuse me. Moving on to new business. We have a request for city support from the Sea Island Carriage Company and Southern Roads Carriage Company due to COVID-19. Linda, Mr. Prokop, when are you going to explain that to us?
Linda, go ahead.
Hold on just a second. I don't see Rhonda or the
We have to open it for discussion. Right?
Yeah, I just sent them the invite, so they're getting it on. Since we stayed on the same meeting, they didn't have the initial Zoom invite, so we're waiting on that to get sent to them right now.
Okay. I'm gonna let.
Do we need a motion for this?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
We have a motion.
So move.
Motion and a second.
I'll second it.
Seconds. Okay. Now we're waiting for Rhonda to explain what they've requested. I know we have the numbers in our packet, but
Yes, and what we have, the carriage operators, Nicole and Rose also, who will join us. Rhonda and Rhonda met with Rose and Nicole to discuss some of the hardships that they were going through with the COVID, and they presented a bunch of questions about wanting to be able to amend some ordinances or waive them for a while they are trying to gain their business. So what we did was we actually said, hey, let's put it all in writing, because council's the only persons that actually waive the ordinances. So Rhonda was going to give you an overview of the memo that's in front of you.
I'm here.
There she is.
I see her.
There was some confusion because when the other meeting didn't end, we were signed on under the other link. So I apologize for that.
No, it's not your fault.
It's our fault, Rhonda. We decided to stay
It's
on
our
the
fault.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm sorry for the delay. And I see one of our guests is on. That's Nicole. And Linda, I know you'd already kind of started the background story, so to speak. So you can continue, or I can pick up where you left off.
No, I think I'm gonna let you take it, because you were very integral in making this happen. So.
Okay, so at the risk of repeating something Linda may have already eloquently told you guys, it's no surprise to anyone that the tourism sector here in Beaufort, the local tour operators, I should say, have been very adversely affected by closures that were in effect imposed on them due to the COVID-19 pandemic situation. Both Nicole Myers of Sea Island Carriage Company and Rose White of Southern Rose Carriage Company approached us to ask us if there was anything that we could do similar in the spirit of our Together Beaufort initiatives that we had begun, like the restaurant extensions and so forth through the mini leases, and of course some of the similar to the proposals that we have on the table to assist people with some pop-up parcels. Since the closures and with their now being able just recently this week to be able to open, while waiting for that sort of blessing from the office and the recommendations that came through with relaxing some of the restrictions, both carriage companies have been very, very busy readying themselves to fall into alignment and be ready to receive our tourist guests as they start coming back into the marketplace. I'll let them expand some of the things that they've been doing to prepare their carriages around some of the health and safety measures that they're taking. I do want to draw attention. I know you have the documentation and the body, the written information regarding the request. Since the request was prepared, I want to bring your attention to one of the items that we've listed under the heading request for temporary waivers and modifications to ordinances, specifically to the request regarding the use of Bluetooth speaker systems in their carriages. For tonight, that issue can be kind of taken out of the request because both carriage companies have found another way to sort of compensate for what they were asking for in that request. They are going to adapt to using a system of speakers and earpieces that their customers can wear while they are on the carriages, so they won't need to upfit the carriages as described in this particular document. Nicole, I see you're on the line. I'm going to pitch it to you in a minute, but just wanted to let council know then that the two main requests that we would like you all to consider. One is, of course, the ask for temporary June through August additional slot times to take advantage of the cooler weather. Of course, at the time they're going to be opening, we are moving into the hotter season, and it's not uncommon for the horse carriage companies to be shut down earlier than later and not be able to complete a day due to heat. And then for an additional temporary June through August slot time of 7 p.m. in the evening, so that when we have days, the hot summer days where we have a reduction in temperature, let's say they've been shut down, but we have an opportunity where maybe we've dropped some degrees in the weather and they're able to then run a carriage in the early evening. They're asking for the addition of a slot time at 7 p.m., which is outside of their normal last slot time for every evening. And as stated in the documentation, if approved, we will be reaching out to coordinate that information and the timing and get the word out in the Point neighborhood and the other areas of the downtown community that are affected. So with all that, Nicole, would you be so kind as to kind of expand on some of the things that you brought to me and Linda at the time we prepared the document?
Yes. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Thank you.
So I'm Nicole with Sea Island Carriage Company, known as the Red Company downtown. I know Rose would really like to be in on this. I don't know if she's got the new email for the new invite, but I'm going to go on anyway without her. So obviously this coronavirus we were shut down. I want to say it was March 18th that we were actually forced to close. We were considered non-essential. We started feeling effects to this though in the beginning of March. Our numbers were dramatically decreasing, and the tour buses that typically come into town were canceling. So we were dropping numbers dramatically. I know some of the information that was given to you was that we generate 50% of our annual income through the months of March, April, and May, which we have lost. With that being said, we still have to, just like any other business, we still have bills we have to keep up with, but we do have the living animals, that we have to keep up with. So it's been kind of hard to keep up with that without any of the revenue coming in. What we are asking for, a big thing that would help us out tremendously is the forgiveness of our quarterly slot fee. I don't know if you're aware of the cost of that or what other information you may need. Slot fee is due quarterly. It's a rotation fee that we pay the city that allows us to operate. It covers several other things as well. It's due January 1st, April 1st, July 1st, and October 1st. When this initially happened, we came and asked for some forgiveness on the April 1st, and it was pushed back to be due June. Now we're asking if that could possibly be forgiven rather than pushed back. We also were unable to make the July slot fee because we didn't really have much of a chance to operate in April, May, and June to create that money. We were able to open Friday. The 22nd was the first day that the governor allowed us to open back up for business. We did run this Memorial Day weekend, both companies did, and we ran at about 20% of what we would typically do this time of year. This is usually a pretty good weekend for us. Any questions on any of that yet?
Council, any questions?
Well, I
No.
more information on this. I'm sorry, Nan, go ahead.
Well, I've just, okay, so the 11,067.25, I'm assuming that is the slot fees for both companies combined?
Is that for one? So they're a little bit different between the two. Mine personally is $5,428.25 quarterly.
Okay, so this must be both of y'all.
For the 1 quarter, yes. So it would be double.
Okay, so you mentioned that you had made April, May, but June hasn't happened yet. So you don't know actually what's going to happen in June.
I can tell you what we did this weekend. Like I said, it was about 20%.
Right.
Yes.
And so y'all are asking for the city to give up, you don't want to pay for July, August, and September, but yet you don't know yet what kind of business it's going to be.
Well, the way it's typically, our business is, we make 50% of our annual income those 3 months of March, April, and May, which I know I've said earlier. January and February, December, January, and February are terrible. We don't even break even. We have to save up in the fall to create that. Well, we never had this spring. It never happened because of Corona. So we never were able to make the money to get through into to really pay.
And nobody did.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do slot fees cover?
Good question.
Well, I mean, don't you, I mean, you have a space in the waterfront park, right? So it's public, there's public space and there's a little house that is provided and there's a parking spot. I mean, what, are there physical spaces that are a part of the slot process?
Rose has been around a little bit longer. I wish she was here. I don't know if anyone can try to get in touch with her, but
She's here now.
Oh, is she I know we get the 2 parking spaces in the loading zone. I was recently told that we actually own the ticket booth. We're responsible for it, but it does sit on your property. And it also is to cover Rhonda and Linda's time when they are monitoring the heat machine, when they are giving us special permission to do field trips or weddings, which we really haven't used any of those assets the last 2 months anyway.
I guess my point is, I think to Nan's point, a lot of small businesses are in terrible months.
Yeah.
And so I think from a city standpoint, we have to be careful about what taxes and fees we waive, right? We deferred hospitality, accommodations, and business license fees until June. And I think that was prudent to get through the uncertainty. I don't think we're in a position to waive those fees for everybody, simply because we really rely on them for operations at the city. However, in your case, if the slot fees pay for the rental of public space, right, where that building sits, the water trough area, the use of that parking lot to operate your business, and the government has come in and told you that you can no longer use that public space and pay for, I would be okay with forgiving the slot fee for the period of time in which you were totally closed down and unable to operate, right? Because I think that's the agreement we made with you on the slot fee situation. Where I have a little bit of trouble, and I think Nan might agree with me, is on those the 3 months that are coming up. We don't really know what that's going to look like. They could be better than we think they're going to be. They could be worse than we think they're going to be. And so a suggestion I might have is in favor of waiving the first 3 months, but could we defer the second request until September 20th and look and see where numbers are and readdress it then?
Yeah.
Because you're also asking for some considerations in expanding your ability to capture additional sales on both sides of the slot, earlier in the mornings and later in the evening, which I think I'm in favor of as well, but I want to hear what my other colleagues have to say.
The only thing I'm concerned, well, 2 things. I have 2 questions for Nicole. Nicole, did y'all get PPP funds?
No.
You didn't? Okay.
I personally haven't.
Okay, and what about Rose? Do you know if Rose got PPP money?
I applied, but I haven't heard anything yet.
Okay. I understand and trust me, I support the horse carriage business. I'm on Bay Street in a retail store, so I love the horse carriage business. My only concern is that 7:00 p.m. slot. The 9:20 I don't really have a problem with, but I'm afraid I can hear some people on the point right now. I'm afraid that might be a touchy situation, adding a slot during dinner time after 6 p.m.
Even if we are newly implemented headsets, which it's a mic that the driver wears and an earpiece.
So there'd be no noise at all, you mean? They'd hear no voice?
very minimal. And it would only be one 7, one carriage would go into the point.
Well,
So the two of you would rotate. Who goes
Yes.
in the same with 920 or two on 920?
No, it would always just be one additional.
Okay, and then I have another question. So does this mean, like, if say the 7 o'clock thing happened, that means that Rhonda or somebody from the city is going to have to be hanging out to check those temperatures, right? To 6:30 to see if the temperature is okay for the horses, correct?
Right.
Sorry, go ahead, Ron.
Our normal protocol is, of course, the heat monitor is set out at the beginning of each business day. And of course, we monitor that throughout the time that the carriages are in operation, up until any time that we would have to close them down once we reach that 91-degree threshold. So what happens is at any time during the course of the day, if the horse carriage operations are suspended due to us reaching the heat threshold, they are shut down for the remaining part of the day. So if we had a miracle and a cloud and a cold front came through 2 hours later and it was 60 degrees, we would not resume carriage operations. We never resumed them once we reached the threshold. The idea behind the 7 o'clock slot would be to supplement on those days where we had, let's say we had a closure at 11 o'clock in the morning, which happens frequently during the hotter months. And then at 6:30, the need would be rechecked to confirm that we are not, that we are below that threshold for operating. And then they would be allowed to resume and do that 7 o'clock slot. So yes, we still would be have to take responsibility for monitoring the heat, not just saying, well, it's 7 o'clock and it's 94, go for it, because we said you could have a 7 o'clock slot.
Right.
There is some additional work and input that we would need to do, by our department in order to afford them that opportunity.
Yeah, I'm still a little concerned about that 7 o'clock for the point people. I don't know. I think we're.
Yeah.
I don't know what the rest of everybody else.
As a resident of the point, I'm okay with the 7 o'clock.
Yeah, but I bet there's some that won't be.
Well, I want to let you know that Linda made some very good points when we started pulling together the request as we were examining the pros and cons of that 7 o'clock specifically. And that was to reach out proactively to the neighbors, let them know what's going on, and sort of, for lack of a better phrase, not to make a pun, but it's a pretty good one, take their temperature to see, where the comfort level was and that kind of thing. And really just address it as an opportunity really to support a local business that has, like many other types of businesses, lost out on some opportunity, and to give them just a little additional boost for this short period of time, June through August, in order to make a little extra revenue or salvage what could be the end of a day when we might have an opportunity to resume and do a 7 o'clock slot. We definitely said 1 would be the most appropriate approach if y'all decided to grant that. Being the summer months, it doesn't get dark to closer to closer to 9 o'clock. We thought that it would be a little bit more palatable with it being the summer months going into the neighborhood at that hour. So that was sort of the rationale or the thinking behind it. But to your point, Linda has made it very clear that we would have to have some discussions and good exchange.
So, Rhonda, it would be you and Linda probably going to the residents of the point and asking each one of them.
That's right. Yeah.
Well,
working with the neighborhood association, I think, working through the network that's put together with the neighborhood association.
Right.
And just for reference, we have emailed the president of the Point Association. We let them know that the tour operations were starting to kind of spread that to their owners. And we did get some feedback so we hope that our first line is to go out by email and send it to the resident of the neighborhood and kind of get their feedback before we even allow it actually to go. But that was the plan.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, as long as we have their feedback. I mean, if they all say fine, I think it'd be great. I mean, I'd love for them to have that extra run there. But I just think that, you know, the point residents are going to be the ones that should make, you know, should decide.
Yeah. And I'll say, like anything else that we do, in both Rose and Nicole have been very cooperative partners in terms of how we're working with our, you know, being mindful of our residents and the others in our downtown community. It's certainly something that we'd be open to pulling back on if it became an issue or it became an impediment of any type.
Right.
I think both would agree that we would then readjust, you know, the slot times so that we can keep everybody comfortable and keep things cohesive in the neighborhood.
I guess I'm thinking the reason I just paused because I knew some of the very older residents of the point actually who aren't around anymore. And I know what their reaction would be. So they're not around anymore. I mean, a couple of them, but you know, I'll be curious to see what they think.
Yeah. It's been pretty creative. We found out, which I think is a great idea, on Pinckney Street, they're planning a really cool birthday celebration parade, car parade for one of their neighbors. So I think in these times, people are shifting and adapting their thinking and their ways a little bit to try to give and take, you know, all the way around. So hopefully they'll kind of understand, and we certainly will be mindful and defer to how they feel about the situation.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't speak for all the residents of the point, but as a point resident, I mean, I'll candidly say the last couple of months of no carriages and no walking tours have been kind of nice. And no offense, no offense. However, I think this is a small gesture that we can do. I think to Rhonda's point about supporting a small business, because I have enjoyed on this weekend seeing the tour guides go by and seeing guests go by with big smiles on their face and folks waving, and it does feel like one small step back to normal, and so I've appreciated that.
We've had multiple residents come out on their porches and wave and greet people and welcome them. I mean, it was actually shocking to us too, you know. But the tour guides were coming in saying people are coming out on their porches and saying it's glad to have you back. People are riding by the water trough. Welcome back. We missed you. You know, we try hard to do our, you know,
let me just ask this. We've got at least two questions, right?
Right.
We've got the financial issue and we've got the extension or altering of hours. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
It's just those two. Does someone want to suggest that we divide the question, or are you comfortable dealing with it as one? Because they're two, they're obviously related because it's the two companies, but they are different issues.
Right, one's about money and one's not.
One's about money and
Yeah.
the other's about trying to make up the money that they don't have. Right.
Right, exactly.
So would you suggest that we divide the question?
Or maybe do we modify the motion because of the two, because this is conditional on, this is a temporary thing?
Well, we can modify the motion, or we can withdraw the motion and have two motions. One would deal with the money and the other would deal with the hours. But I think
that's probably a good idea.
I think we have to separate them. If
Yeah.
you would agree with that.
I think I made the main motion.
And I'll withdraw. I did the second, so I'll withdraw my second.
Okay, I'll withdraw my motion, but I'll let me get it in front of me. And you said we're striking the adaptive measure enhancements to conduct tours, right, Rhonda?
That's correct.
No longer part of it. Okay. So I would motion to approve the temporary slot times June to August of 2020 to allow one additional slot time on 9/20 and
7 o'clock.
One at 7 o'clock.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second to that, correct?
And do we make it though on condition of the information that Rhonda and Linda find out from the Point residents?
Yes,
Shouldn't that be in there or no?
it probably should.
Okay, I'll withdraw my second. Mr. Murray, if you want to take a stab at that.
Yes, Stephen, you want to?
I mean, that makes it a little awkward, but because to go poll that neighborhood, is a big job, and the feedback we're getting is not bad. It's anecdotal, but you know, my view is the Point gets lots of exceptions, and if there's a chance to help businesses in Beaufort, then we ask them to make that compromise if it is. That doesn't mean that Ron that someone shouldn't go tell them or send out a note. We'll be doing it.
Can I switch a little aside? How many days in the 3 months do we actually think it's going to be cool enough to run at 7 p.m.? Because it's still awfully dang hot at 7 p.m.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the addition of the request for the addition of the 7 o'clock slot, and Rose and Nicole, correct me if I'm misstating this, is really when we have the opportunity to do it.
Right.
That is correct.
If it's something we could do every evening, because to your point, Stephen, it's not unusual for the sun to go down and we're still over that threshold. I think we want to emphasize that the heat threshold and the criteria that we have for them to operate at any time absolutely is going to take precedence over this happening at all. And again, you know, not to be Debbie Downer, but there will probably be very limited times that the opportunity to run a 7 o'clock slot will present itself.
Right. That's what I'm thinking.
So not at all thinking it's going to be an everyday type of occurrence. And again, as Nicole stated, it is one carriage, not a situation that we have when we're running back-to-back slots.
And this is over a 3-month period?
Right.
June through August, that's correct.
July, August.
Which are our hottest months out of the year, and which is the heat. So we know that the 9:20 will be able to go. So I think that out of the extra slots that you're getting, the morning will probably be used up before the 7 p.m.
Right.
But gives them the opportunity to have that one more carriage out there and get at least some revenue from that last carriage.
If this was a forever change, I would certainly want more resident feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Given it's timely, it's only 3 months. It is the hottest month of summer, and it will probably preclude most days from you running the 7 o'clock. I'm in favor of the motion as presented.
May I ask?
Go ahead,
Sorry.
Nicole.
May I ask a question? I don't know if it's too late to ask or if it should have been put in before. Is it possible to also have a 9 a.m. and a 9:20? Or is that not the proper way to ask for it?
At this point, we're introducing and withdrawing motions pretty fast, so you might as well ask anyway.
What about if you did the 9 and the 9:20 and then scrap the 7?
You'll have to ask my my friend Rose.
I'm fine with that.
Because I'm wondering, really actually how many times will that happen? Like Stephen said, man, when it's hot, those temperatures don't drop that quick.
It's the afternoon that you have a 3 o'clock thunderstorm and it stops business. And then, by 5:30, it's cleared up again, or 6 o'clock. And then the temperature could be lower, but it's going to be that 1 in 100 chance.
Right.
Right. And then you got to bring the horses back and, hook them back up.
And then Rhonda and Linda have to check the machine, and I think it would be a little easier too.
Right. I mean, I would be for adding the 9 and the 920 personally.
Okay, did I hear Rose say she's all right with that?
I'm fine with that, yes.
So we would scrap the 7 and we'd go with a 9 and a 920.
Yes.
Yeah, because if you leave at 9, you're not going to be in the point till what, 9:10, 9:15?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we are using those earpieces the whole time the plexiglass is in place.
Well, I just don't want you to see me in my underwear going to get the newspaper.
Oh man,
So,
put our clothes on.
So Stephen, you want to make another motion?
So you can up your fee. You can up your fee on the mornings when you're going to see Stephen.
provide blinders for the horses and for your guests.
Or else make it gratis.
Okay, I'll withdraw my motion and I will re-motion to approve. I was trying to find the exact language and I'm up in my agenda now. To approve a June through August 1 slot at 9 a.m. and 1 at 9:20.
Okay. I'll second it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion from council?
Can I just ask a technical question from the original ordinance? Doesn't the city manager have the authority to add modifications on the time slots?
I don't know.
I think he can add special permits and
I
things.
know the specials are there.
And the times are specific in the ordinance, I believe.
I think they
For
are too.
operation.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I lost my internet connection and I didn't hear the motion. So could somebody refresh or remind me what it was?
Sure.
Councilman Cromer,
Go ahead, Stephen.
I motion that we approve the additional slot times, but 9 a.m. and 9:20, not 7 p.m.
And I seconded it, Phil.
For 3 months.
For 3 months.
June through August.
Right.
All right.
Okay. Any other discussion or questions?
Ask Yvette if she has any comments.
Hey, Mayor, Council, we do. We have a question relative to this discussion from Terry Maud. She asked, so if the Point residents protest, the 7 p.m. slot would be a no-go.
That was obviously asked before we changed them up. Got it.
Yep. Terry, we've already changed the times. There won't be a 7.
Anything back in that?
Anything back?
No.
Mr. Mayor, call the question, please.
I will if there's no other comment. Those in favor, Mr. Murray.
Aye.
Mr. Cromer.
Aye.
Mr. McPhee.
Aye.
Ms. Sutton.
Aye.
And I vote aye. So it's unanimous that we will add 2 slots for over a period of 3 months, one to be at 9 a.m. and one to be at 9:20 a.m.
Thank you.
Now,
Thank you.
now we have the second issue, which is, well, as I remember, it was to excuse the fee for, I don't have it in front of me, the particular time. Anybody got that in front of you?
April slot fee and the July slot fee.
Just say that again?
The April slot fee and the July slot fee. So 2 middle of the year.
$22,134.50.
If I could.
Please.
The way I see the slot fees, and the reason I brought up the facilities is because I sort of see us, I mean, we grant them the privilege of holding one of the slots and operating their business in the city. But additionally, we essentially serve as their landlord by leasing them public property in the marina parking lot, in parking spaces and in the little house, and access to public streets. So the way I sort of justify the request is that we're a landlord. They weren't able to use the space that we have leased them for the last 3 months, which has made it impossible for them to generate revenue. So essentially our leasee is asking for forgiveness of the leaseor for their rent for a few months. In that situation, I'm comfortable approving the April through June payment because the majority of that time they were closed out. I'm a little uncomfortable forgiving the next 3 months payments because again, I think it's an unknown, but I will acknowledge I think it's an unknown. And because I won't say it's a minimal amount, but in terms of our overall budget, I would be comfortable deferring the July through September payment like we did with the April to June, deferring that to September 20th. But asking if staff and council is comfortable with us coming back at that time to have a conversation with the business owners to understand the position that they're in. Because again, I want to be an optimist about this and want to be optimistic that we can reopen safely and responsibly, and it won't be as bad as we project. But it could be. So I would maybe propose forgiving the April through June, but deferring the July through September to September 20th, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Stephen, I kind of agree with you on this. But remember too, these fees are not really lease. It was, they bid on this fee. They bid on that amount of money that they pay, that, they're paying.
Like
so
a franchise.
That is correct, but they also would be using staff time for temperatures and other controls. So I think part of it, and remember, we're actually essentially giving access to city property to other businesses to help them grow. So,
right.
But why don't we put a motion on the table, then we'll. Stephen, you want to do that?
Just put your motion.
I would move we forgive. I'm sorry, let me go back. So I move that we forgive the April to June payment that was due 6/20 of $11,067.25, and we defer the July through September payment until September 20th, and that's in the amount of $11,067.25 for both Southern Rose and Sea Island Carriage Company.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that?
I don't have a problem with it, but I am concerned that some other non-essential businesses that have been affected by COVID-19 are also going to come and request similar deferment, if you will. And I don't know what our situation is. I mean, we already know that we're pretty tight on the budget now, but Bill, any thoughts?
The thoughts are you're wherever you're cutting revenue, you're going to have to cut expenses. And you're right. Other businesses were non-essential. They're going to have every right to ask the same thing. And as you said, these slot fees are bid on. And I agree with Mr. Murray. We don't know what the future is going to bring.
Yeah, Phil, I think you're right. And that's why I have a hard time. I have a hard time voting on the request based on the hardship argument. Because as I pointed out, a bunch of us have faced hardship. Nan's business, my businesses. I mean,
my landlord didn't give me any break.
Right. I mean, I've had to pay my mortgage. I've had to pay my business license fees. It stinks. I think the differentiator, did I say that right? Easy from what's different here versus the majority of other businesses is that they essentially lease public space. They lease space from us. We're their leaseor. And we in the state told them that they couldn't use that space. And so I think that puts them in a little bit of a different category than, and I've tried to think today, are there other businesses that we lease space to? And I couldn't come up with any because I agree. I don't want to open a precedent where everybody comes running in asking for forgiveness because we simply can't do that in the position that we're in. But I think this is a unique a unique situation for us.
And Stephen, if I may, one additional thing to, just to be clear, we're only talking about the slot fees. We're not talking about business license fees that also come, just the slot fees.
Hey, Mr. McPhee?
Well, like Phil, I have concerns that there are other businesses that can certainly air some deference as to whether they had business that can afford to pay their fees, but I think there are some extenuating circumstances here. I can probably live with the waive of one and the deferral of the other.
I don't, and Bill, do you think there, I mean, as Stephen said, this is the only company that is using public space. Now, I know that we are granting the restaurants public space, right?
Very reasonably.
Very reasonably. So those would be the only two, was the restaurants and then the carriage tours, right? Would there be anyone else?
The marina.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't pay us a slot fee. They pay a percentage of sales, right?
They pay a lease based on the rentals that they slot.
Right. So they only pay what they collect.
Thinking slips and slots here. It's
but that would be based on a percentage of what they receive. So if they were down, their percentage payment to us is also down.
Correct. I was
compared to being a flat fee. Yeah.
Correct.
So they'll pay less because they took in less.
Right.
And they were essential and stayed open the entire time, although in a limited capacity.
Right.
I hear Mike saying he could live with it. I think we all have your concern, and Nan has been probing to see if there's anything else that is comparable. You raised that concern. Do you got any other thoughts after listening to the others?
No, I'm okay with what Stephen, with letting the first one go and then deferring the second one until September. I'm okay with that.
Phil?
I'm good with that as well. I just brought it up because I was afraid that there maybe some others would step up and ask for the same thing.
Kathy, let me ask you a question. This actually, from the standpoint of times and budgets, this spans two. I mean, this is going to be in both budgets.
Correct. The first, first 3-month time period, April through June, is this current fiscal year. So that would be just a loss of revenue for the $11,000+ dollars. The next one would affect the upcoming budget.
Right. So you'd have to compensate for it in 2020, in next year's budget, and then we have to find a way to pay for the rest of our expenses for the rest of this year's budget.
We got a little more trouble to get this year balanced, and it's revenue that is tentative that you wouldn't count on in next year's budget.
Correct. And if you remember, any shortfall in the Parks and Tourism Fund would need to come from the general fund balance, because there's insufficient resources in the Parks and Tourism Fund to cover any losses in that fund for the year.
Or cuts in Parks and Tourism Fund.
Not through June 30. I'm speaking for June 30. For any losses that are going to occur between now and June 30 will come directly from general fund balance.
Right.
Well, but I got the year to date as of May 15th, and a number of the lines are still well below. I think we were at 80% of year end when that report was generated. And to the city manager's point, I thought you froze all non-essential spending and travel, and so there's a number of line items that I noticed over the last few days that are at 40-50% less of where they're, where they could be by June 30th. So Um,
That is correct, but there are also contractual obligations that are not frozen, and those costs will incur. And in the information that you've got, not all 9 months have been reported yet because of the delay in the company sending their invoices to the city. So typically, March invoices aren't received until towards the end of April. So I'm
Okay.
not sure the
The
date of.
report you generated for me, though, was dated May 13th.
It probably contained the 9 months, but didn't contain 10 months.
Okay.
So you still have 3 months of some pretty substantial contracts
Sure.
that are still yet to be accrued.
Where you want to go, guys? Comment?
Call the question.
I'm in favor. Call the question, please.
Okay. We'll vote now. Mr. McPhee,
Aye.
Ms. Sutton,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Cromer,
Aye.
Mr. Hodgling, aye. Okay. So we will forgive the first one and we'll wait and see on the other one. Correct?
Thank you very much.
Thank you both for joining us.
What?
Thank you.
Okay, next issue, annexation and zoning parcel of 3484 Trask Parkway.
So moved.
Second.
Have a second. Mr. Richard?
All right, I'm gonna share the screen if that's okay.
Yep.
While we're doing that, Yvette, were there any other comments or questions on that last issue?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen.
Only thing that came up as a comment was from Terry Maud, and she said, agree with you, Stephen, forgive April to June since the government closed them, but like everyone else, figure out how to pay the next bill after you are open.
Okay. Thank you, Terry Maud.
Thanks for listening.
Over there at Maud Manor.
Okay, we got it drawing up. Babe, you ready?
Yep, I'm ready, Mayor. Wood Timber, a limited liability company, has requested that the parcel there at 3484 Trask Parkway be annexed into the city and be zoned RMX. We had a public hearing on this on April 28th, as you recall, and there were no public comments at that time. The public notices were published in the Beaufort Gazette on March 31st and in the Island Packet on April 2nd. Signs were posted on the property on April 1st, and postcards were sent to adjacent property owners on April 6th. And let me see if I can move this.
Excuse me. Sorry.
No reflection, Mr. Bouchard.
Yeah, no reflection on you, David. I should have muted myself.
It's okay. As you can see, 3484 is adjacent to the Marine Corps Air Station across the highway, and also RMX there at Parker's, the convenience store, is also RMX, and that's the zoning that the applicant is requesting. And the future land use from the comp plan is designated 02, and it is in the 70 to 72 DNL noise contour from the air station, which just requires that if they do new construction on there, that they build in noise reduction in the areas where people will frequent or spend a lot of time. And this went to the last thing is this went to the Metropolitan Planning Commission on May 18th. and they unanimously voted to recommend approval.
Okay.
Okay.
Did we get a motion?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, we did.
We did? Okay. Any comments from council?
David, what is the proposed use that they plan on doing it with this in this RMX designation? It says timber. I assume it's going to be some type of lumber company or something, or?
You know, I'm not sure that and I may be getting mixed up because we've had multiple people, I think, interested in this property. At one point, it was a landscaper. I'm not sure. I wouldn't want to bet on what the current applicant wants to do on that. He may be online.
He
or
spoke
some-
work session before, didn't he?
Yeah, it's going to be a brickyard.
Bricks.
Yeah, they're a brick company.
Okay, that's right. That's right. So
Yeah, they're a company and they have pavers and they want to have space where people can choose selections of bricks and pavers and so forth, some inside and some outside.
Sort of a landscape, hardscape type of business?
Like that company on the way to Savannah.
Yeah, Savannah Hardscapes.
Yeah.
I really got the impression that they were like even a wholesale brick company. Are they online with us tonight?
they were on the. I'm surprised because they did attend on the Zoom meeting, the planning committee. That sounds right. I had forgotten that, Mike. I'm glad you're. I think I've confused things from the earlier interest was a landscaper, but I think Mike is right. I think this one is masonry and.
Yeah, they're a brick company. That's their main company. I watched the Metropolitan Planning Commission meeting, and he indicated that their interest was to have a location locally that they could sell brick and pavers and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's just remember, we're not voting on a business, so we're voting on zoning. And
Right.
Oh, I know, with the zoning, but Mayor, the zoning's impacted if it's RMX and it's some type of thing that might create an environmental problem, because they're right next to, I know, an RMX designation, but also they were gonna, future proposed use was O2, which is rural conservation, and they're right next to Albergati Creek. So that's the only reason I asked what was gonna be put there. Whether it sounds fine. I mean, I don't have a problem with it, but if it had been something a little heavier, maybe I would have had some concerns.
Yeah, but I mean, we've got we're on the same page. We're voting on the designation. I just want to make sure we're not not voting on one business or another.
Right.
The designation is going to create the limits. The environmental will cover that as well. Okay, I think we're on the same page. Mr. McPhee?
I'm good.
Mr. Murray?
Aye.
Ms. Sutton?
Aye.
Mr. Cromer?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So it's unanimous to amend the certain provisions of the, I'm sorry.
Annexation and zoning of parcel.
Of 3484 West Parkway. Yep. Okay. Next order of business is ordinance amending certain provisions of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Beaufort to authorize meetings to be held by telephone or other electronic means and matters related thereto. Should be first reading. We've been doing this, and is this just basically setting a precedent for us, Mr. Prokop?
So moved.
Oh, a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
And I have two movements. Motion and second. Okay, Bill?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, what this is, our current ordinance of having electronic meetings is under our emergency ordinance. This takes and makes it permanent so that if you want to have a work session, or we want to have a Metropolitan Planning Commission or a pre-app that a developer from Charleston can't make it for the day, and we can have a Zoom meeting. It just makes the Zoom meetings, or electronic meetings, I should say Zoom, electronic meetings as part of our ordinance so they can be held going forward. Because we've learned we can use them and they can be effective. So we basically are just taking this out of the confinement of just only being used during an emergency.
Well, it
Can you,
says.
can
Stephen,
you legally do that?
Stephen, you got a question?
I do. Not so much a question as a comment. So I love the electronic meetings. Like I'm wearing shorts at a council meeting, and you know, guys, I've been trying to move decorum down in council chambers since I came on the body. So it's nice to see no one else wearing a tie. But I still don't think electronically we have created the best opportunity for the public to weigh in. And I don't know exactly what that is yet, whether it's the ability for them to log into a Zoom meeting and be here with us with their faces in their head. I don't feel like typing something in advance and sending it in is quite good enough. I don't feel like the comments or questions on the Facebook list is quite adequate enough. So I just ask that we keep looking for the technology that allows the public to feel like they have the same opportunities they do at an in-person meeting. Because I think especially in your body, we've become known, thanks to you, Mayor, for this foundation that you've set over the years of inclusiveness and allowing, especially in our work sessions, to allow other people to be a part of the conversation. I think it's why we have a very civil city. I think it's why we get to really good policy ideas and decisions most of the time, because we do allow people to come in and be a part of the discussions. And I think we can get there with the technology. I don't think we're quite there yet. And so I urge a little caution of putting especially controversial issues where a large number of the public would like to weigh in. I think we've got to figure some stuff out before. I mean, like tonight is a perfect example. I know we're having some tech problems. It's no one's fault. But the YouTube platform is not really as conducive as the Facebook platform. So I'm in favor of it because I think we're actually reaching a larger member of the public electronically. But I also think we've got to figure out some other opportunities to make sure they feel like they're engaged in a part of the discussion.
Well, as on the other side, I mean, I see what you're saying, Stephen, but I think, yes, on controversial issues, yes, a meeting at City Hall is much better. But we've had an amazing viewership on these Zoom meetings that we never have had. I mean, nobody comes to the city council meetings. I mean, not nobody, but you know what I mean. There very, very few people ever come unless it's a controversy. How many views we've gotten on these Zoom meetings. Now, granted, I agree with you. It's great when Facebook works, and sometimes Facebook doesn't work. Sometimes Zoom doesn't work. But to me, I'm looking on the other side that I think this has involved our community even more. That's all I have to say.
And I agree with both of you. I mean, I probably can encapsulate just about what you're going to say, Stephen, because I totally agree that there's a great opportunity for the technology platform and so forth. And I also have the concerns of people not feeling that they have a vested ability to speak with the kind of technology that we're using. And to that end, I really think that moving forward, when we are back in the chambers and at our dais, the opportunity for us to have the feeds coming in from people's questions that Yvette could be monitoring and so forth can just add an additional dimension to our public meeting.
Let them call in and be heard.
To some degree of at least letting it being relayed through the city clerk or otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. Thank you.
But I don't want, and I also don't want, in the same respect, I don't want to lose that personal touch that we have. I don't want it all to be electronic, obviously. Having people in the chambers and feeling that they are heard and know where we're coming from and so forth, I think is important.
And I also would say, I totally agree with Stephen that we have to be able to keep looking and find a more refined way this ordinance is just saying we can continue electronic meetings, but how and how we improve that. Not only us, but many other municipalities are going to be looking for the same thing. So this is saying we can do it, but I totally agree. It's got to, tonight's a perfect example. And last time was too, we have technical difficulties. There's got to be smoother and better ways, and we have to find them.
Phil?
Well, I think this is a great opportunity for one of our startups in the BDC to come up with a better way of bringing in the public into our meetings. There are a couple of things though. I wanted to know if this had been legally vetted. I'm not so concerned about electronically because I know we're doing this with Zoom, but telephonically, I didn't know you could call in and have a voice vote, so to speak, from somewhere else. And also, the good side of this new ordinance would be that you don't have to postpone meetings like I think we've had in the past for lack of a quorum. You know, because if they're somewhere else, they could, you know, participate. But those are my feelings.
Yeah, you know, I'm one who wants civic participation, and I'm delighted at the numbers were generated, but I don't know that we, as I think Stephen said, really have the back and forth that we do have in in-person meetings. My inclination, yet I'll go with everybody, would be to table this until we have something specific and we know exactly what we want to do, to sort of keep the pressure on us. We can go ahead and pass it and not implement it until we have something that we're happy with. But, you know, anytime we distance ourselves from the public, or we don't use that city hall as forum, or or the decorum changes for meetings, I think we have to think very. I'm certainly not opposed to it. If someone could, instead of going on Facebook, could be calling in and there was a monitor who answered the phone and that person could have their couple of minutes to say. But, you know, we haven't gotten it down to public hearings. As Dave said at when we had our last public meeting, we didn't hear from anybody. Well, had we had a meeting, might someone come? I don't know. I just don't think we're ready. We're comfortable setting a precedent and using that as a goal to fulfill it. I'm certainly not opposed to it. Any other comments? Do you want to vote on it?
I like your idea of tabling until we come up with a solution, because I do think there are members of the public that I wouldn't say are mistrustful of us, but are just mistrustful of government in general. With staff, I know Charleston struggled a little bit with some of their boards approving things where the public didn't feel like they were a part of the conversation. So if it would bring additional comfort to the public, I'd be okay tabling it until we had a more solid solution. I think one exists. I think there's definitely got to be some platforms out there that either exist today or, you know, are emerging right now.
Yeah, I bet somebody's already doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Can we ask Sean if he knows of anybody doing it?
I'm doing some research right now as we talk. So,
Are there any comments?
Yes, there is. Yvette has one comment. Yvette?
Yes, I have one, and it's from Lolita Watson. She says, "You certainly can hear council members better this way."
What did you say?
She can hear us better, Billy Kaiserling, here on the Zoom meetings than she can at City Hall.
Well, I know, but I can see her sitting on her couch with her feet up right now, getting paid to record us. Report on us.
Hi, Lolita.
Thank you for what you do, Lolita.
Okay. Is that a motion, Stephen, to table?
I'll second.
It wasn't a motion because it's non-debatable.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
But wait, Nan, Mike, Phil, what do you? Bill?
I'm okay. I mean, I think,
I'm okay to table it, but let's not let it die. Let's see if we can find a better platform that will work for us, because I think it shows that we have a public that's willing to tune into us. And if we can make a platform that's better for them to feel engaged through a process, I think it's a good direction.
The only problem I had with
I just want to add that by tabling it, as soon as the emergency's over with, you cannot have any electronic meetings. So by tabling it, putting it off, as soon as the emergency's over, you couldn't have a meeting with a developer on a one-on-one with David and a developer or whatever. You have to go back to the person-to-person meetings. I'm not saying it's wrong to table it, but we're in a way saying we want to be sure technology is perfect before we're willing to say we want to do it. And I'm not sure that's a reality.
Okay.
So, Bill, you're saying it would be better to have it than not have it?
If we have it, we don't have to use it till we have it perfected. If you don't have it, you can't use it.
Right. Exactly.
So
Okay.
I'll ask Bill, which one will get you and your team on this and perfecting it fastest? To table it or to go ahead and pass it?
Well, first of all, we got to get past the budget so we can get that behind us before this is done. We're going to look at it either way. I just think I'd rather see an ordinance in place and we don't use it until we're ready. Saying, okay, let's table it. Then 2 or 3 months down the road, we're bringing it forward. That's just my own personal.
It's like a little tool in your toolbox.
Correct.
Yeah, this is only first reading, so.
Yeah.
Is it first reading? Yeah, that's right. And it's an ordinance, so it requires 2.
It does.
Right. So we can pass it at first and table it the second until we get a solution or something, right?
Yeah. Good idea.
That is first reading. Okay. We've done that before, haven't we, with other people? Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
Ms. Sutton.
Aye.
Mr. Cromer?
Aye.
Mr. Murray?
Aye.
Mr. McPhee?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So it's unanimous for first reading. And once we get through the budget, we'll have to be working on coming up with a new model.
And Lolita has another comment. Yvette, will you share that with us?
Yes, she says this is much better than how county has their meeting.
No comment.
That's probably because
they're right about that.
There are only 5 members here.
Mr. Mayor, while you contemplate Ms. Lolita's comment, I just want to bring 2 points of clarity to this discussion for the next time. There was no contemplation in this ordinance for how the remote meeting would be conducted. It gave you options that were not listed to a platform. And second of all, it did come from a lawyer who wrote this.
Say that first one again, Reese, please.
This ordinance was not tying you to a platform for how you did this. It just was allowing you to continue with an electronic means. But as far as platform, it didn't delineate that. And then the other thing I wanted to say is that I think the key component that we need to be reaching out and finding something to work is interaction of the public from a remote place, because this has been going on in many governments throughout South Carolina over the TV for a long time, and it's live, but there's no way for the public to interact.
Right. Okay, that's helpful. Okay, we're ready to vote. Did we vote?
We did.
Started.
I think we did.
We did. Started.
We did.
Okay.
On first reading, we did. We passed it.
Thank you. Okay, we have an executive session.
Mr. Mayor, just a quick question. Do you want to do what you did at the last meeting and just go through the reports first and then go to executive session?
Absolutely. Good idea. City manager's report.
Oh, you pulled a fast one on me. Okay. The first is a reminder to everyone, as was said earlier, that the public 9 as part of our regular council meeting. If anyone wants a copy of the proposed budget please contact the city clerk's office or myself. We'll be sure you got it. Second, we are very pleased to hear today that the students of USCB will be starting face-to-face classes on August 20th, and we welcome them back to Beaufort. And they will have a shortened face-to-face year. Come Thanksgiving, their face-to-face classes end, then they go to electronic classes for the rest of the year, but they're going to go straight through 2 months, no break. Third, again, I want to thank John O'Toole and the economic development staff for their work on recruiting companies to our Commerce Park. And basically what I was going to say here, what was said before by Stephen Murray, Mike McPhee, everything. Economic diversity is critical, and so is our tourism diversity. And our number one goal is to create more good paying jobs and with the diversity. We started to do this. We're on a good track. Let's keep going. And fourth, I want to remind everybody, shop local, visit our restaurants, thank all your first responders, stay safe, wear a mask, and practice social distancing for the good of the entire community. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. We have now distributed 2,500 masks. We have, I think it's 17 now model businesses. We only gave them to businesses that we think were going the extra mile to be clean and safe. And part of the reason was to get people into those businesses to show a standard. Whether people are wearing them, you know, I guess I'm so into masks, I'm disappointed that I don't see more people wearing them. But I think that I'm very interested after this weekend. It was a strange weekend because, I mean, I just read before the meeting about another shooting in Columbia. And we know about the event in Union where 900 to 1,000 people had a post-quarantine wounded. I saw a lot of people out. Some places they're doing an incredible job of social distancing, and others they're not. I think that in 2 weeks we'll see what the impact of the weekend, and I hope it's not a big spike up. That would be a good sign. The numbers do keep going up, but I think you have to remember that the testing is going up. And with more testing, there are going to be more numbers because 25 to 50% of the people could be asymptomatic but still carry. So, you know, I just ask everybody to be patient, to hang on. Remember the social distancing. Remember that when you wear a mask, you're protecting someone else from you. And when that person in front of you is not wearing a mask, they're not protecting you from them. You know, we've sat in with the hospital, Reese and Bill and I, and Kathleen, and I think the hospital has done a fabulous job. It sounds, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but it sounds as they're pretty much back to normal. They are resuming full patient care now. They've still reserved beds for COVID. They are resupplying for what could come in the future. But based on those calls, I think they're in pretty good shape. And I want to thank everybody and our staff for everything, our council and our staff, for everything we've done to try to keep people calm. I sense it's going to get a little rough out there as people, there's a divide between those who don't believe and those who do believe, or those who are fearless and those who are fearful. And we've just got to walk that fine line, knowing that when someone calls and begs us to make her employer make people wear masks, that's just not our business. It's the good sense of the business. We can't babysit, we can't regulate, and we learned early on, we have very little authority beyond supporting what the governor's supporting. So I thank everybody for hanging together. That's my report. Who looks like they have something to say?
I'm good. Just to continue thanking staff for taking care of things in the business, making a lot of modifications or remodifications as we try to test through this budget season. And I appreciate all their work and all their efforts. First responders and the hospital and all the staff that are helping keep us safe. We appreciate them. We appreciate everybody out there on the front lines.
Ms. Sutton.
Yeah, I just was watching CNN today, and we're in the top, there's 17 states where, the cases are still going up and we're one of them. So, which to me even says we have to be more careful. I'm surprised most people with masks, there's some that don't. There's some that don't want to wear a mask. And what I've learned is that not everyone will not agree on the same thing. But I still stand by the notion that I want to keep my staff safe and myself, and keep everyone that walks into my store safe. And I think that's the key, is that, so that's all that I have to say.
Well, you're doing a good job of it. Phil?
Well, I can't add too much more than what's already been said, but I do want to point out one thing. Our Affordable Housing Task Force, we postponed our June meeting. We're going to be looking at hopefully getting together face-to-face at some point in the future. And hopefully, if that doesn't work out, we may have to go resort to electronic meeting, but prefer not having to do that so we could have some public input. That's all I have.
Mr. Murray.
Well, I'd echo what my other colleagues said. I don't think we're through this. So I encourage folks to continue social distancing and following protocols. And to echo the mayor, if you go into a business and you see something that you think could be done better, I would encourage you to ask a manager or an owner and communicate your thoughts directly, because I do think most business owners want to be responsible and want to provide a safe environment for their customers and their employees. And I commend the business community who's been adapting to this very quickly and trying to put those safe protocols in place. But again, I don't think we're through it. So let's continue being careful. Some really good news. You probably heard in John O'Toole's presentation, we exceeded $100 million just over two years ago. So I think that's a pretty awesome milestone. And if you see John or Charlie, I hope you'll give them a high five. Really remarkable the difference we've been making in the last few years over there at the Corp. And I appreciate council's support and especially the mayor's support for being the catalyst to getting the corporation going several years ago with the other. Also, I want to congratulate our friends and teammates over at the University of South Carolina, Beaufort, Chancellor Panu, Vice Chancellor Skip, Dean LaFavi, and Department Chair Dr. Brian Canada. Last week, USCB's Computational Sciences Department was named the number one, the most popular college for computational sciences in the country.
Wow.
So I think that's a pretty cool nod for them. I think that tech could thrive here in the Low Country, and they're increasingly an important part of the tech ecosystem that we're building, working towards economic diversification in the county. So high five to those folks. Keep up the good work over there. They've also hired one instructor that will begin cybersecurity programming this fall. And they are teed up to probably hire a second staff member pretty closely, a separate professor that will also be expanding into cybersecurity. So that initiative is well underway. Finally, I want to congratulate Shelley Barrett over at the Beaufort Digital Corridor. This is her last week in Beaufort with us. Her boyfriend, Carl Whalen, want to congratulate him. He just graduated from medical school. And so he is going to the University of New Mexico, Albuquerque to start his first job. The corridor is in a really great spot because of the last 2.5 years of Shelley's leadership. And I hope you'll join me in congratulating and thanking her for what she's done for the city and for the Beaufort Digital Corridor. We did a executive director search, which I've been briefing you on the last few weeks, and happy to report that the Digital Corridor unanimously voted to offer Nisi Phillips the job. She's accepted. She was a dean of a small college out west, has done some stuff in business backgrounds, finishing up a master's in informational sciences. And I think it's going to be a exciting you. Shelley is going to stay on for the next 2 months virtually to help Nisi get up to speed. But I think the board of directors, we don't expect to stop any momentum at the corridor and actually expect to keep the pedal to the metal because there's some pretty great things happening over at the corridor, even through all of this. And that's all I have tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McPhee.
I already had mine. It would be Mr. Cromer.
I'm sorry, Mr. Cromer.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we go into executive session pursuant to Title 30, Chapter 4, Section 70A2 of the South Carolina Code of Law regarding receipt of legal advice.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Those in favor, Mr. Cromer?
Aye.
Ms. Sutton?
Aye.
Murray?
Aye.
Mr. McPhee?
Aye.
Mr. Kaiserling? Unanimous. We are going into executive session. Now, are we going to get a new invitation?